Of East Hampton. Today is October 1st, 2014. We will have a very busy evening. We have 10 applications to review. We do have a public hearing that'll start at 7 p.m. And prior to even kicking off these applications, I have a quick announcement. And that is, tonight would have been the night that we would have closed the hearing for 55 Wayne Scott Hollow. Apparently, we have not received comments yet from the Suffolk County Planning Commission. We're still waiting the agricultural data statement. So I've been advised that we should keep the public hearing open for at least another month. Is that right, Mr. Jinlicki? You think?
Yeah, we thought that
or?
give them enough time to actually get the mailings out to the property owners and get an opportunity for those persons to respond. So
the record would be kept open only for those property owners, the ag data statement.
Yeah, just for that purpose, not for general comment purposes.
Fair enough. So that's what we'll do. Thank you. We'll get right into our work session at this time, and our first subdivision review of the evening is Georgia Farm Final, and Ms. Powell will give the overview.
The planning board granted approval for the final subdivision in December of last year and for a modification in May of this year. It's a 13-acre parcel on Green Hollow Road that's being divided into 4 lots served by a common driveway, and there are 2 agricultural reserved areas. The applicant is requesting a second modification at this time to provide for a reduced setback of 10 feet for a tennis court on Lot 1, where the lot borders agricultural reserved area A. This would be Lot 1, and this is agricultural reserved area A in the front. The applicant notes that the planning board has reduced setback requirements from agricultural reserved areas for tennis courts and other subdivisions, and states that the noise generated by tennis courts does not negatively impact the reserved areas. The planning department notes that the board reduced the setback requirement for a tennis court from an agricultural reserved area in the Estates of Further Lane subdivision. The current setback requirement under zoning requires that yard setbacks from all property lines be doubled for playing courts and at least 50 feet in depth adjoining residential property. This results in the current requirement for a minimum setback of 30 feet. 15 feet would be the accessory structure setback. Doubled it brings it to 30 feet. The planning department offers no objections to the modification requests to reduce the setback requirement to 10 feet as long as the proximity of a future tennis court to the agricultural reserved area doesn't impact the potential for farming the parcel in the future. And by that, we were just concerned that maybe people playing tennis 10 feet from the agricultural reserved area might have a problem with active farming, and we wouldn't want to cause a problem for future farmers. We also note that Lot 4 also borders an agricultural reserved area, and we suggest that you discuss with the applicant whether there's a potential for a future similar request for this lot.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Powell. Is there anyone here this evening who would like to comment on this specific application, this memo?
Good evening, Planning Board members. Alice Cooley from Egan and Matthews. I just wanted to clarify the reason we're asking for this. My client is actually going to be living on Lot 1 and would like to put in a tennis court because her husband's a tennis pro. So this wasn't considered before. We apologize for the modification after the fact, but.
I have a question.
Yes.
Where exactly is the tennis court to be? Is it going to be on the west side or the south side?
The ag reserve.
I know, but there's a whole, it could be north, there's a difference because there is a neighbor to the, what is that, the south or the west?
I mean, this is the only boundary line that we're asking you to vary.
No, I know,
So they
but
would have to
if the
comply
tennis court, I'm just curious where it would be if we're going to okay a closer set, a smaller setback. I mean, if it's in the southwest corner, then if there's is there a residential property on the other side?
It would have to be 50 feet from
Just curious.
3 sides where it's bordering other residential lots. So that does.
It would have to meet this setback. We're only asking that I messed up. That this setback be varied.
The setback from the ag reserve. So
Yeah.
it would be 15 feet and then 50.
10 feet and then 50.
10.
Yeah,
10 and 50.
exactly.
Yeah, go ahead.
follow up? Just-
Yeah, Joe, right?
But I'm not clear what the reason is why the applicant wants this.
Well, they would, in order to design the property the way that they would like to design it, they would either have to have this granted by you, or they would have to go to the zoning board for a variance, which is a possibility, but they're not often granted those setbacks. Since it's very unlikely that an agricultural reserve would be bothered by the noise of a tennis court, the board has granted this type of relief in the past, so that is why we're asking for it.
All right, I'll comment.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Cooley.
Okay.
Is there anyone else that would like to comment on the memo? This is Bob Schaefer's application. He's not here this evening, so Nancy Keeshan is kind enough to take the lead on it.
Thanks, Reed. That was my main concern as to where exactly the tennis court, it's hard to agree to something where, where I really don't, what am I approving? And I have no problem with the 10 feet if it's to the, I think that is the, is that the, I'm trying to, yes, thank you.
Kind of.
If it's on the east side, yeah, I have no problem with that, because it's all within its own, it's not going to irritate anybody. It's not going to get, and I would, that would be fine, but I'd be reluctant to, if it were on the west side. And it does set precedent, and we've done it before, but if we continue to do it, it'll be something we always do. So that's how I feel about that.
Thank you. How about you, Joe?
So, yeah, I have not visited the site. So this is almost a philosophical question to me. If the code requires that there's a certain setback, and are we putting ourselves in a position that we're going to routinely vary the setback when there's no particular hardship? Isn't the answer then really to say that there's something wrong with the code? And if we do vary it, why would we reduce it to 10 feet? If the setback would otherwise be
30.
30.
The setback for accessory structures is 15,
30.
but the code requires that it's double for plain courts, so it would be a 30-foot setback.
Why would it be
requirement.
50 on the residentials, on the residential lots?
It's 50 where forward is resident, house with lots of residents.
As opposed to an ag reserve? So I guess that's really my question, is this been, is it just one case where this has been done, or is this done routinely?
I can only
And-
recall one where we've been asked to
Right.
consider that.
I mean, it might become
There's only been
routine,
one.
and, yeah.
It just seems kind of odd to me. It seems like maybe the code should be changed where you're adjoining an ag reserve. Or it should not, 10 feet seems too close to me. I guess that's where I land on it.
Okay. Pat Schutte?
I think this is a reasonable request. I mean, given that you have a reserve, then you have the road and nothing across. And it's going to meet the setbacks on the southern side. So I'm comfortable with relaxing this for this, in this case.
Diana Weir?
Yeah, I understand what Job is saying, and also what Nancy said, that maybe it should be a code amendment of some sort, but again, maybe that's something that we should send something to the board, because since they're in charge of code changes, that, because this can happen. I mean, this is an individual case. There is nothing there, there won't be anything there, so to have a 30-foot buffer when they can use the property, more to their liking, and they're still keeping the 50 feet from residential, I don't think it's an unreasonable request, but understanding what the concerns are at the end of the table here, I would write something to the board and say maybe it's something they should look at in the future, because we do have a lot of ag reserves, and if people want to put a tennis court, why should they have to be that far away from a place where there's nobody or nothing?
I have a question for you.
Yes.
If it goes before zoning would have to see it on the map.
Right.
Why don't we have to see it on the map?
Well, I don't know.
I was just curious.
fine.
I mean, does that, I don't know. Maybe you know.
I mean, we know it's 10 feet and 50 feet from,
Yeah.
From the
Yeah.
southerly side. It wouldn't
Yeah.
hurt to have us see it on a map.
If
But-
you're going to the zoning board, it would be for a specific structure,
Mhm.
showing hardship and asking for a variance for that
Relief, yeah.
structure. What they're asking you is different. They're asking you to change the building envelope for that tennis court or
Right.
not or another tennis court in
Right.
that area.
So basically I have no problem with it, but if it's something that board members feel should be a code change or addressed somewhere in the code, I agree, and maybe we should write the board and tell them.
Okay, thank you. How about you, Ian?
I'm a little bit conflicted about this. On the one hand, I think that the setbacks, the main intent of setbacks is to protect the neighboring properties. I also realize that when a neighbor gets closer, in this case the applicant, there's more of a likelihood that they could complain about neighboring activity. And I think that farming activity sometimes with noise, dust, or other regular agricultural activities, it might put this neighbor in a position where they could complain about what's going on in that ag reserve and compromise the ability to farm it. You know, I would certainly, I think, be okay. I don't know if there's a way to put an easement in this language so that any activity on a tennis court within the relaxed setbacks couldn't cause a complaint against the neighbor. I know that might be getting complicated, and I'd have to ask our attorney about that. What I would hate to do is, in principle, I have no problem with a 10-foot setback because no one farming that property is going to care about what's going on the tennis court. I'm worried about a future, you know, applicant or person on the tennis court complaining about the ag area. There's no reason to think that that's going to happen necessarily, but if there was an extra protection so that if we did relax it to 10 feet, that they could no longer say, hey, there's a problem with the neighbor because of that, I'd be in favor of doing that, and I think everybody would win in that case. I do think 10 feet's pretty close. I certainly think the double setbacks in the case of a tennis court is there to protect the neighbor from the noise of tennis being played, which again, won't affect the farmer. My only concern is what, you know, might come up in the future with this property owner complaining about that reserved area. So I'm sort of mixed on it. I'd be curious to hear what the applicant would think about some sort of easement, or if there's what our attorney would say about if there's a way to do that.
You could require some sort of a covenant restriction on the property. So
Yeah.
something in the record to put a future owner on notice.
You know, I don't want to make it overly complicated because I think this is generally a small thing.
Cultural reserve, so. The map will show an ag reserve, so it is kind of on notice to the public already.
I don't think my client would have an objection to a covenant. I think that might be more appropriate than an easement.
Okay.
And I think that's a good point, absolutely.
I think a covenant would certainly satisfy me. Again, I think the 10 feet, you know, from someone using the ag reserve would be no big deal, but you know, when these properties change hands, somebody might not realize that was, you know, a relaxation of a setback, and then could have a problem that something so close to them is bothering them, when really they
Sure.
got the benefit of that, you know, 20 feet.
Use, Alice, some of the language in the code, like the right to farm part about warning people about dust
Right.
and chemicals and the normal things that go
Sure.
along with agriculture.
Well, certainly if the applicant's willing to do that and our attorney can make it all, you know, kosher, I would be all for it.
I think that's
Yeah,
fair.
we could do that, sure.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Anything else?
That's all?
Can I just
Yeah, Joe,
raise
go right
one
ahead.
more, just as I'm looking at this? If the setback that's being doubled is 15 feet, right?
Yes.
If it wasn't doubled. So it seems to me to go to 10 feet when you're actually even going past the actual setback, let alone it being doubled. I'd be more comfortable with 15 feet. The other thing that's occurring to me is that there's a very good chance, depending how this is farmed, that it might have a deer fence. And in that scenario, you're going to then have a tennis court fence and a deer fence with 10 feet between them. And I think that could also have an impact. It's not, you know, I've seen situations where deer are caught and it gets very narrow. So for whatever it's worth, I'd be more comfortable with it, getting that space bigger.
Okay. Ian, just a question for you real quick. Explain to me that covenant. What are you proposing there?
What I'm saying is generally these you know, double setbacks are designed to protect the neighbor. In this case, I'm not concerned about the neighbor being bothered by the tennis activity.
Right.
I'm concerned about a future owner of this property complaining about the agricultural activity next door. So I would want some sort of covenant. The reason I use the word easement is because I know there's noise easements out there, but a covenant probably is more appropriate. But I would just want to make sure that any future use of this tennis area that's in, you know, getting the benefit of our relaxation of the setbacks, couldn't then complain because so close to them, there's agricultural activity that they don't like. So how that language is worded, I think that has to be worked on between the applicant, our attorney, and I guess this board. But I would want to include things like dust, noise, and basically they couldn't file a complaint against agricultural activity within those 30 feet, which would probably include most of the tennis court.
Okay. We've done this previously at 10 feet. I don't know if it was a one-time thing or if it's happened on multiple occasions. I do hear both Nancy and Job, and I thought they brought up some real good points, but personally, I think this is a reasonable request. I don't see any downside or hardship to relax this down to 10 feet. The idea of the covenant, I think, is fine. If the applicant is okay with it, then great. That's something that the two attorneys can work out and put in, but that's my input. Did you have a comment?
How about 15? I think would we all agree on that?
I mean, would the applicant be fine with
Does it work for
15
the
feet?
applicant? Yeah, that's what I'm
Instead of
looking
the
at.
10?
I don't know. See here.
I mean, I think that's something we could all live with. I could live with that.
I mean, the precedent is for
Split the
10,
difference.
and we would prefer 10. If it has to be 15, then obviously that's out of our hands, but we would prefer 10.
Okay.
I'll say about that, my instinct was 15 too, because I understand the doubling is extra, and so go back to the regular. But if you're willing to put that covenant in that protects the ag reserve from being used as it should be used, I don't have a problem with 10, and I think the residential properties are still protected. We're talking about one border, and it's more important to me that the reserve can be used properly without, complaints by the neighbor than that extra 5 feet. And I appreciate Job's comments about, fencing and things like that, but the fencing, well, would most affect neighbors who are still protected by the 50-foot setback that's required. And otherwise, maybe the corridors for deer and other animals to pass, but I think the 10 feet is sufficient, certainly for I don't know how long a tennis court is, but however long that might be.
I think they're long.
So let's go to consensus on this one. The question really is the minimum setback requirements. 10 is proposed. Who's in favor of 10 feet? Pat, I think you said you were.
It doesn't matter either way to me, but just because it's a reserve, there's nothing there, the road is on the other side of it, this is affecting no one, so I'm comfortable with 10 feet. In this situation, every situation is different.
Right,
Okay.
But in
exactly.
this given situation, I'm comfortable with 10.
And Ian, you said you're fine with it with the covenant?
I'm good with it with a covenant, and I do think that there's no need for a code change here. I think this should be a case-by-case basis, because every situation varies.
Okay. And Nancy?
I wouldn't agree at 10, I would at 15.
Okay, and how about you, Joe?
Yeah, I can't, I don't think it really protects the interests of the farmers to put a tennis court fence 10 feet from the property line.
Very
Okay.
close.
Well, we got 4 in favor of 10 feet, so that passes. Thank you.
Can I make a comment?
Please go right ahead.
I'm only commenting because you're discussing setbacks and agricultural reserves. And while I have the opportunity, and while you might be considering making a recommendation to the town board, when the town changed its yard setbacks in 2005 or thereabouts to vary by lot size, it didn't take into account that agricultural parcels tend to be larger than most of the parcels. And I had a client, Peter Dankowski in Wainscott, that had to propose an agricultural building, a barn, further from the property line and therefore deeper into the farm soils than would have otherwise have been the case. So I would like to just take this opportunity to ask you to ask the town board to reevaluate its setbacks on agricultural parcels, and that they should not vary by lot size, because many of them, if not most of them, more than 10 acres in size. And I think the town should look at proper setbacks for agricultural buildings on agricultural reserves, with a view towards reducing the required setbacks.
The only issue with that,
Has nothing to do with the application before you.
but it does have to do, because when you put a building on an agricultural reserve that's next to a residential, then that's a little bit of a challenge. This is not that. You know what I
Right.
mean? You're gonna put a barn and you're gonna relax it to make it much closer to residential homes.
No different
That's a
than it
little
was in
different.
2005, when the setback was based upon the zoning district in which you were located. So, make it the accessory structure setback or the principal building setback, whatever it is, that it was before 2005, when it varied by lot size. Now, most agricultural buildings are subject to A10 zoning setbacks, because they're generally more than 10 acres in size. It penalizes the farmer. It doesn't, look, the farmer's gonna have room to do it. It really penalizes the town because you're using up more farm soils by moving the building away from the property line.
It's interesting.
I agree 100% with that, because whether it's a 5-acre piece or a 10-acre piece, the distance between the neighboring property, the effect is the same, so that's a good point.
I make a motion that we send a recommendation to the town to reconsider setbacks by agricultural reserve.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Are we talking about, we're going back to the application? Are we talking about what Rick was
No,
talking
Voted
about,
on
or
it.
Just in
or
general?
tennis?
Generally to
Reviewing the
reconsider
setbacks on
setbacks
agricultural
so
It's got to
that
be worded some.
The idea of standardizing the setbacks on an agricultural reserve based on the zoning district as opposed to lot size, I think makes a ton of sense. But that's a different issue than we're
Right.
talking about in this
And
application.
reviewing the code when it comes to setbacks that abut of open space, or that abut an agricultural reserve, or that abut areas that are not going to have neighbors. And we're asking people to go far away from nothing.
Well, I'm not in favor of that. I'm in favor of the other way, with what's on the reserve being
You
changed.
know, can I suggest something, maybe?
Joe,
With
go
all
ahead.
due respect to my friend Rick, that had nothing to do with this application.
It did,
No,
no.
So why don't we put
Yeah.
Rick's topic on the agenda for another night to
For a
really
slow
think
night.
about it? Okay?
Okay.
But if we want to do a letter about
setbacks by ag
setbacks
reserves, just
from accessory structures from ag reserves,
maybe redefine it.
I would support
yeah.
that letter.
That's,
That's the letter
that's what
that
I
I'm
meant.
That's the
asking.
letter.
Yes.
All right.
Kind of.
Thanks.
So
Thank you.
Jody will work
You're
on that.
asking for
Well, I'm not in favor of that.
setbacks, like what they were.
Right.
To
when it
help,
comes to-
Right,
to-
right.
right.
Well, what would we recommend then in that
No,
letter?
we have to talk about it. We
Yeah.
can't just,
No, I think, but we're now talking about a motion to relax the
I
setbacks
think that's pretty.
on the
That's
residents.
pass rate.
Well, on this application, but not towards the town board in all cases. I mean, there's parking areas that we relax regularly. We're not changing that as a rule. Parking areas are regularly relaxed, from the accessory structure setbacks.
Maybe the motion wasn't the proper way to go about this, but we're gonna talk about it.
Let's
and see
talk
if
about it
something
on
comes
another
to
night.
the-
Let's do that.
Yeah, because
Perhaps
we got a lot
something
on the agenda
talk about
tonight and
how,
a public
how we're
hearing.
gonna structure this to go towards the town.
Let's
What I said
continue.
is the board should reconsider setbacks when it's next to an
An ag
open
reserve.
space acquisition or agricultural reserve. I was kind of specific.
Yeah.
I didn't say they should relax everything.
No, I
Didn't I
agree.
say that?
That's what I said.
Yeah,
It
that's
was
what
very
you said.
clear.
That's what you
And
said.
it gets things moving.
Let's
we can go
let's
back.
continue on with the subway reviews, Handy Lane West.
This Handy Lane West subwaiver is a 2.1 acre property on Handy Lane in a B residence zoning district and consists of 4 tax map parcels that have been combined in an old file map. We discussed this at a work session in June, and there were a number of issues came up that have been addressed. The first was we recognized that this was archaeologically sensitive area, and Phase 1 and 1A and 1B study was conducted by Tracker Archaeology based on topographical and environmental characteristics and the proximity to historic sites and historic Indian trails. The report found that the project area did have a higher than average potential for containing Native American historic resources. However, field testing did not result in encountering any such resources, and the report concludes that no further testing is recommended. We do note that the report didn't accurately indicate the soil types on site. It didn't depict the property as being partially located in a CPE, which is an area that contains 15 to 20% soils on site. And the topography analysis doesn't take these soils and topography into account. Nevertheless, the shovel test pits were dug 4 to 5 inches into the subhorizon, an undisturbed area that would be necessary for testing if regrading hadn't occurred on the site. public water is depicted on the map, and the map shows that there is sufficient separation from, that separation from future sanitary systems on the proposed lots would not be an issue for obtaining Health Department approval. Clearing has been provided for 2 of the lots, which indicate that the lots are below the clearing permitted under the code. The map does not provide clearing for lots 3 and 4, which appears to indicate that no clearing has been located on the lots. This should indicate this. But there's also a driveway across Lot 1 that's referenced in the applicant's letter that it's clearly visible from the site, and we recommend that that clearing be taken, added into the clearing calculations for that property. The majority of Lot 1 represents the side of a hill, and the planning board requested topography at 2-foot contours in order to determine the location of any slopes of 20% or greater, so they could be excluded from the building envelope as required by the town code. The map was revised to provide 2-foot topographic contours, and it shows extensive areas of 15 to 20% slopes in green and 20% and greater in red on Lot 1. Lot 4 turned out not to have as significant topography. The applicant's letter states that the areas of 20% slopes are not natural and are the result of earthwork done in the past, particularly with regard to the road that they cite, an old driveway that was put in. The planning department notes that at least one of these areas shown of 20% slopes connects to areas off the property and doesn't appear to necessarily represent regrading of the site. An existing cleared, graded, relatively flat area exists around the existing residence, which is proposed to be removed as part of the subwaiver. And the topography from that area to the top of the slope, which is less than 100 feet, ranges from 38 feet to 52 feet, with an overall rise of about 17 and a half feet. Which would appear to necessitate extensive grading for construction purposes. There are a number of provisions of the town code that require that the planning board consider relatively flat terrain, both at home sites and along access drives, requiring a minimum of fill, that significant topographic features shall not be destroyed. So the planning department offers several potential mitigation factors for consideration. The first is if you increase the lot width of Lot 1, maybe adjust the lot lines a little bit, might be able to pick up another 15 feet of flat area, which would give you a little bit more flat area on Lot 1 that could go within a building envelope that wouldn't need grading. Each of the lots exceeds the minimum lot area, so that wouldn't appear to be, a slight reduction in lot area wouldn't appear to affect the ability to have lots that meet zoning. You could require a building envelope that excludes the rear portion of Lot 1, which is where the steepest or the most significant topography is. You could limit clearing and grading to a designated building envelope, design a building envelope and say no clearing or grading outside of that. And then additionally, you could require the installation of a project limiting fencing and straw bales between Lot 1 and Lot 2, so that when there is clearing and grading on that, there's not a lot of erosion onto the adjoining lot. And finally, we did receive a letter from the fire marshal stating that the project's next to a public water supply and that's sufficient for firefighting purposes. So in conclusion, discussion regarding the clearing calculations and the topographic contours and whether there's any mitigation that should be incorporated in the project on Lot 1 are outstanding.
Thank you, Ms. Powell. Is there anyone here that would like to comment on this memo? You know, I do have some questions for you, Mr. Weaver, in reference to the town engineer's memo. I'm sure you've seen this.
And I've discussed it with him, so I'll go to that.
Okay, yeah.
Dave Weaver, representing the applicant. The only areas that, that the town code says should be excluded from the building envelopes are the areas in excess of 20% slopes. These areas up here and this one down here, both of them, were created by the construction of the house. The driveway that Joanne is referring to, I pointed it out, it was actually overlooked by me even my first time looking at the site because there is vegetation growing in it. It was cleared when the house was constructed, and it actually created these 20% slopes along that part. This little 20% slope here was where there was some cutting done to level out the lawn. The bottom line is all of the 20% slopes that are within the building envelopes were man-made, could be easily eliminated, and we feel should not be removed from the building envelopes. The 17.5% slope that was referred to, according to town code, is buildable, and we don't see any reason to try to force these houses onto smaller lots. We're trying to balance the subdivision, balance all the lots, and feel that this can adequately be done and still meet the code. As far as the driveway, the town engineer asked that the road, that it be moved further up the hill, and we agree. The applicant owns the land on both sides of the street, so he has no problem with that, and we want to move, we will move in the next presentation to you, the cul-de-sac up into the flat area. He wants it all the way up here where the old cul-de-sac was. We disagree, and would rather have it down in the level area, but a little bit longer so we don't have to create flag lots. I told you before, I'm opposed to flag lots in half-acre subdivisions, and we still are, and we'd rather not have any flag lots and have all of our lots have direct access onto the cul-de-sac. Have any further questions? Oh, and as far as silt bales between lots 1 and 2, a typical condition of yours is that they be required in almost any subdivision we've done lately. So I would expect that to be a condition of the approval anyway. You know, fencing and silt bales, we have no problem with that. It's basically been required in every subdivision that we do lately. It's one of your standard boilerplate, I think, conditions of subdivision approval. So we're not opposed to that at all.
Thank you.
And is there anything else?
Okay. Anyone else? Then I'll go right to Diana Weir.
Hi, thank you, Dave. You cleared up some of the questions I was going to ask. I also agree about the driveway and taking access on half-acre lots. Usually flag lots in a half-acre zone make long, narrow driveways, and the fire departments can't get in, so I agree this is a much better layout with the circle down at the end. And I have no problem with those 20-foot things that were created, because I understand how that happens. I haven't really gone to look at the property in person, but I have a pretty good view here. So I'm comfortable with what's been presented so far. I don't think the lots have to be made smaller. But I would like to see the building envelopes on that so we can get an idea of where it's going to be for us, you know, to see where the houses are going to be laid out. I understand there's public water, so you can be closer to lot number 2, is that second lot, because you don't have to worry about the separation, but I would like to see the building envelopes for the planning board to be able to see clearly where they're going to be.
Okay. Pat Schutte?
I agree with Diana as well. And I agree with, you know, what Dave was saying about the cul-de-sac. If they could just move that down to the beginning of the fourth lot, to that flat area, that, I think that would make more sense, and it would be better for the applicant as well, and for the owner of that last lot there. So I think this subdivision is moving along quite fine. And I do agree with the applicant and Diana as far as the 20% slopes in those 2 spots. I'm comfortable working around that. It's a minimal area. And I did walk it tonight, and I somewhat see what Dave's saying, and I can understand that. And I mean, it's an old place. And so, and it's all been disturbed, so I'm comfortable with it.
Okay. How about you, Ian Calder-Fremont?
I generally agree with the previous board members. As far as the cul-de-sac goes, I think it's a win for everybody to shorten that driveway and move it to a flatter area to satisfy the engineer and still avoid flag lots, so I think that solution is a good one. With respect to the slopes, I certainly respect Mr. Weaver's expertise here, and I don't doubt what he's saying at all, but I would want that confirmed from the planning department or somebody else that those were, man-made changes, because we got to be careful about making exceptions for 20% slopes or beyond. So I have not seen this property. I'm sorry that I can't comment on it with more, experience myself, but as long as those are truly the results of man-made activity, I've got no problem with allowing building throughout that property.
Joe Potter?
So the archaeology, I think that's fine. And I apologize, I have not been there either, and I'd like to go out and look at it. And I think sometimes you just have to see the site, and in terms of the slopes. So I don't want to dismiss the planning department recommendation just yet.
Okay, Nancy Keeshan.
I have been to the site, and I support the plan as it is. I don't think those slopes are a problem. I would like to see, as Diana suggests, the building envelopes on the plan when, at the next submission with the new cul-de-sac, but otherwise, it looks good to me.
Okay, and I generally agree with the previous comments as well. Sounds like the applicant will shorten that driveway. I understand their preference for direct access and no flag lots. I have no problem with the application based upon what you've told us this evening about those slopes being man-made. So, I support the application. And at this time, I'd like to go to the consensus. Pursuant to stage 1A and 1B, are those acceptable for everybody? I assume they are. Okay. The planning board should discuss whether the clearing lines and clearing calculations on the map should be revised to reflect the old driveway. That's pretty self-explanatory, yes. And then at this time, it sounds like the majority of the board is not requiring mitigation applied to Lot 1. So, thank you.
You were in agreement with the straw bales and the project?
Yes.
Yes, yeah. Okay.
There's a lot of yeses.
At this time, we're going to shift gears and get into our public hearing. Again, Bob Schaefer's not here this evening, so Ian has been kind enough to read the public hearing announcement for Temple Adas Israel Cemetery Expansion Site Plan.
Take notice that a public hearing will be held before the East Hampton Town Planning Board at Town Hall, 159 Pantago Road, East Hampton, on Wednesday, October 1st, 2014 at 7 p.m. or as soon thereafter as this matter may be heard. To consider the application of Temple Adas Israel Site Plan approval pursuant to Article 6 of Chapter 255 of East Hampton Town Code to expand an existing cemetery in order to add a number of grave sites and accessory structures such as fences and grass pavers. The parcel will be cleared an additional 43,562 square feet. A new access point is proposed at Six Pole Highway. The subject parcel contains 85,086 square feet, 1.9533 acres, and is located on the north side of Six Pole Highway and the south side of Route 114, East Hampton, and is situated in an A5 resident zoning district as shown on the official zoning map of the town of East Hampton. It is identified on the Suffolk County tax map as parcel number 300-111-2-3.1. Subject application is classified as an unlisted action pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act, SECRA, Part 617 of the New York Code of Rules and Regulations, and Chapter 75, Environmental Quality Review of the Town Code. A survey prepared by Saska Surveying Company, PC, dated revised August 27, 2013, is available for inspection at the Planning Board offices, 300 Pantago Place, Suite 103, East Hampton, New York, dated September 10, 2014. Reed Jones, Chairman.
Thank you, Ian. Mr. Jelnicki?
I don't have it. Do we have? Yeah.
Did she have to do it for this too? Not just all ZBA? Did you do it for this? The same thing, the same thing you did for ZBA? No, they got mixed up. They thought they did it for the ZBA, that was in.
Joe, enough for this, too? Okay.
So I guess the rules are, Mr. Joe Nicky, we're not allowed to proceed?
Yes, it's going to have to be adjourned until,
Okay, I'm sorry,
Hearing's
guys.
But somebody will help them with what they have to do.
And talk to Jody and.
You gotta notify the neighbors, you know, it's just, you understand.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to go to subwaiver review, Simpkins Polsky lot line modification, and this is Mr. Shantz.
This is just an EAF Part 2 for you. We recommend a negative declaration, and if you agree, then the application is ready for approval.
Okay. Is this something, we've had a public hearing on this? I assume we have. So we'll go right to Joe Potter on this.
So, do we need to make a motion for a negative declaration? So I will make that motion.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Negative declaration adopted.
And then otherwise, I think that we're pretty much ready to go to final approval.
Okay.
Agreed.
Unless, Eric, is there anything outstanding that we need to cover? Okay.
I think it's ready to go.
Diana Wheeler? Ian?
From a planning standpoint, I agree. I think it's the town board with the decision to be done.
As do I. So the application is ready for approval at this time. Thank you. Continue on, subway review, Velarde,
Okay.
Mr. Shantz.
Well, I apologize, but the survey for Velarde didn't get copied onto the smart board here. So this is a request to modify a previous subwaiver, two-lot subwaiver, that had a condition of approval that access be limited to the southern 50 feet of the lot in order to avoid disturbing a roughly 2.5-foot rise along the northern portion of the property. You just heard about on Handy Lane, the planning department normally recommends that areas of steep slopes be preserved. In this case, it's kind of an unusual condition. You can see in the memorandum that I prepared the pictures that are there. As far as I can tell, the highest grade change is 13%. Usually we'll recommend preservation of 15 to 20%, and then the code mandates 20% slopes. So, and this is also an area of lawn. It's not a natural area. So it seems like an odd condition. However, it is a condition of approval. And as the board has seen in past modification requests, if you can get, no, it won't be, because it'll be on scanning storage. If you can get this to actually read, it might be on there. Sorry about that. But as you know, with any modification, they need to demonstrate that there's a change of circumstances. The applicant submitted a survey that includes topography on it. The rise of roughly 2 feet, little over 2 feet, still exists in that area. So I don't think that you could say that, hey, that condition no longer exists. So we could, modify the condition that restricts access to the southern 50 feet of the lot, which is what the applicants are asking be changed, that they're not restricted to that southern 50 feet. However, myself and Lori, who's representing the applicants, looked back through the original subwaiver file, and we did notice that the original subwaiver, the map attached to it, did not include topography. That roughly 2.5-foot comment was a comment actually from the planning department at the time, based on a field observation. It wasn't based on an actual topographical information on a survey. So the applicants have submitted a survey that has topography at this time. It actually indicates that the area of steepest slopes is more towards the middle of the property. No, but I think it's just going to be my memo, right? Okay, yeah. Yeah, that's true, yeah, I forgot about that. The actual area of steep slopes seems to be more towards the center of the property based on the topography. You can just, yeah, we'll just use this. If you just scroll all the way down to the end. So we'll show you the survey here. Sorry for the technical difficulties. But this, this right here, yeah, you can just show any one of these. Basically, this is the area that they're talking about. This doesn't copy the highest quality, but it's not a natural slope. It looks like a bunch of rubble that was kind of pushed up from the road construction. It's not, to look at that, you wouldn't say that that's an area of natural steep slope. So, but again, that's irrelevant. It is a condition of approval, so there needs to be a change of circumstances demonstrated. And I think if we go down all the way to the end here, this is the original survey attached to the subwaiver approval. You can see there's no topography on it. And if you scroll down, I attached a map that sort of illustrates based on the topography. Yeah, based on the topography that's submitted, this really is the area of the steepest slopes here. So It's actually not the northern 50 feet, it's about 25 feet in to about 65 feet in. So I do think that if, provided council agrees, the board, you could have a legitimate reason to say that based on an actual topographic survey of the property, that rise is located more towards the center of the property. I wouldn't recommend that you remove that condition outright, because I do think that it's clearly demonstrated that rise still exists. The question is what is the proper location of that rise? So with that, I'll leave it to the board.
Oh, man. I went to the site this afternoon, I didn't get it.
Lori Wiltshire for Land Planning Services. My clients contacted me about this request because it came up in their title report when they purchased the property. It was a very strange thing to find in a title report, and it's actually a strange condition for a planning board to impose on a simply very residential neighborhood like this. It's in the covenants and restrictions. That's how it ended up in the title report, because it was a required condition of the planning board in 1986 that this 50 feet not have a driveway because of the supposed slopes, which are actually here, and that they would have to take access over here, which they have done. However, my clients have two issues. One is that this bump that was created by road construction originally is causing runoff towards the house and flooding in the basement. And two, they'd like to move the front door over here and come in over here, so it was causing a problem from both angles. And we were hoping to completely eliminate the condition of approval and modify the covenants and restrictions so they can basically use their residential property as most people use their residential property. Very strange condition, and the circumstances did change with the topography map, and there's no 20% slopes on this lot anywhere. So I would like personally to eliminate the condition and allow us to modify the covenants.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
I have to say, it's very honest of your applicant to go through this process.
Really?
Man, oh, man.
I would have gotten a bulldozer and
Poor
flatten that out, and there you go. I mean, really. It's like...
So at this time, I'll go right to Nancy Keeshan.
Thank you. Well, it's Hither Hills, but there's more hither there than hills. I walked by that 5,000 times as a kid, and I really don't know what they were basing their decision on, placing that odd covenant. And I think there's definitely a change, because we have a new topographical map with good information. So I'd be willing to remove it and support what you want to do.
Joe Potter?
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Pat Schutte?
Yeah, I as well. I went to the site and I just didn't understand this at all, and I was very
Yeah,
confused.
very confused,
I was,
me too.
I know, I needed to have
like,
this
what the heck?
explained to me tonight, and I was, we've had driveways where there's a 15-foot cliff and you don't want to cut in there, and so I didn't get it. So yes, if anyone's listening from the 1986 planning board, I'm sorry, but I'm comfortable with this change and revision.
Me too, and I would have bulldozed it down a long time ago. So I agree. No problem.
How are you, Ian?
Yeah, this is a tough one, because change of circumstance is a pretty high threshold, even if we don't understand at all what it's about, and I don't. But you're saying that the idea of moving it to a more appropriate location still doesn't satisfy your...
We just want to be able to plan our property. They might want to put a circular driveway in there. They have to change.
Right, which would be, the circular driveway would be a lot,
Or, but they also want to regrade their property so they can stop the flooding in the basement.
Yeah.
Which is caused by probably the town road construction years ago.
That's a good idea.
As long as, our attorney doesn't have a problem with us considering a change of circumstance, having the proper information, which we now do, like everybody else, I don't see why this was ever imposed, and that's another reason I think why covenants and restrictions should be explained, so that in the future, if this comes up, that we know what we're working with, because here we don't, so.
Well, it said in the resolution of approval, they wanted to protect the 2.5% rise on the northern 50 feet of the property.
And that number is inaccurate?
It's just not in the right place.
It's, what they say is approximately 2.5-foot rise.
But they describe it on the northern end of the property, right, which isn't...
Well, no, it actually says, not verbatim, but almost, that access will be restricted to the southern 50 feet of the property in order to protect the roughly approximately 2.5-foot rise along the road here.
Well, I'm okay with it, because in that language, they contradict their own purposes, so I think that the new map shows that,
Maybe
so
they
I'd be
never
okay with
visited
removing
the
it.
site.
Topography there, the map that was with the old
Had none.
subdivision did not have topography on it.
But what I'm saying is the covenant violates the logic, the reasoning, so.
So, you know, Ian's right in that there is a high threshold on a change of circumstance. There's a high barrier there, and I personally don't like to revisit decisions made by previous planning boards. I don't know what occurred in 1986. If indeed that berm was still there in the same location, even though I deem that condition of approval silly or strange, I don't think that would be a change of circumstance. But I think now, since a new map has been brought forward that really shows the layout, then I do indeed think that a change of circumstance has been demonstrated, so I'm fine with that. So it sounds as though the majority of the board, if not everyone, is in favor of a change in circumstance. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And will the conditions of approval be amended?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And the covenant will be revised then.
Yes.
On the covenant.
I didn't know there was a covenant, actually. So it was just a-
Thank you. Continuing on, the work session, site plan review, Manor House Affordable Housing Project.
Okay, this is an application for a affordable housing project. Consists of 12 units in 3 different buildings. I get my old friend the smart board to cooperate here. In 3 different buildings. It's supposed to be a condominium complex. The property's about 2.7 acres and is in the Affordable Housing Overlay District. And the property, as you can see on the map here, is next to Windmill Village. I'm sure you'll get more background information from the applicants who are here from community housing. This is an unlisted action. We recommend that you declare lead agency status. The applicants had not submitted any detailed narrative about the nature of use at the time of the original submission, and I listed in here some questions about, anticipated number of tenants, number of families with children, the turnover rate, what the waiting list is for the facility. The applicants have, since this memo, submitted a narrative that details a lot of that information, so you might want to look that over and see if anything else needs to be submitted. The special permit standards, there's a number of them for specific special permit standards for an affordable housing complex. I won't go through every one of them individually because it looks like the project meets most of those standards. However, there are 3 issues that you need to discuss. Part 1F talks about basically just in general is the site an appropriate location for an affordable housing development. So you'll need to make that determination. It also addresses whether or not parking is adequate. They have met the minimum required under the code. Part 2A says, are the type and amount of dwelling units appropriate? They're proposing this as apartments that are condominium units. You might want to discuss how that's unique and how that'll operate with the applicants. Part 4D talks about screening and maintaining open space. And we do note that although they've illustrated on here, and this, maybe I should try and zoom this in a little bit. They have illustrated on here areas of revegetation along the corners. There's some up here. And then basically this rough dotted line here is the clearing line where they'll leave everything in its natural state. So they have buffered it along the sides, but there's nothing given for landscaping in the immediate area of the units themselves. The applicants also, with the narrative that was submitted after this memo, did submit information about plants and bushes that they propose to plant around those units. Ultimately, we would like to see a sketch that shows where those are going to be, but the plants themselves are acceptable. So they are proposing to use the town's affordable housing credit program. They'll need 4 credits. They recently went in front of the town board for a public hearing to request those credits. You had actually reviewed this 7 years ago or so. Obviously not every one of the individual members here, but it was in front of the planning board. And the planning board voted to support the project and sent a recommendation letter to the planning board, to the town board, excuse me. So those credits are pending. With regard to traffic, this is a 12-unit site. On almost every other affordable housing complex that you've reviewed, you've required a traffic study. However, most of them are, St. Michael's was 40 units. Most of them are of that scale. This is 12 units throughout these buildings here. So I don't know that the scale of this warrants that. However, that is a discussion that you can have as to whether or not you feel that that's needed. There are no comments yet from the Office of Fire Prevention. I know that the chief fire marshal and a member of the East Hampton Fire Department discussed this yesterday, I believe. However, you have yet, as you know, as of today, to receive written comments about it. One thing that bears pointing out is the fact that the applicants are proposing access for emergency vehicles through Windmill 1 by the cul-de-sac that's on that property, and there's a gate here that will open for emergency vehicles. So that, I think, is going to be a point of interest for for the fire marshal and for the fire department. But again, they haven't given you any specific comments on that.
And that's the only access point that's gated, correct?
That's the only gated one, yeah. The
Okay.
other access point is at Accabonac Highway. The applicants have applied to the ARB. They submitted a comprehensive site lighting plan, which we find okay. In particular, they're commended for adding photo sensor overrides to the lights in front of the individual units so that the individual units can't leave their lights on all day. As I said, with landscaping, we need more info. We're not recommending an archaeological report because it's not in the circle and squares map that's given out by the state. The town engineer, I actually don't know if he had comments because I don't have them attached to my memo. I don't know if you received those.
Yes, no.
Okay. So I guess comments from him are pending. So in conclusion, it appears that the application is incomplete. Basically, you should focus on three things: whether or not there's more information needed in a narrative, whether or not a traffic study should be required, and if additional information regarding the landscaping needs to be submitted. I would add to that, I had anticipated that the chief fire marshal would have comments for you for this meeting. I would add that it should get fire review before it is deemed complete. So I would say those are the four issues that need to be resolved before this could be deemed complete. And with that, I guess I'll hand it over to Al.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Gentlemen, did you want to speak? That'd be terrific, thank you. Yeah, maybe that's a good idea. Okay, yeah.
Wow, that's so cool.
We could almost put that on the table here.
Here, yeah, just move your stuff.
Right here.
Move your stuff.
Do one here. And then we'll look at them for a couple minutes and swap.
Well, train set should be.
This is
very
Accabonac right
cool.
here. The access gate here.
My stuff.
Wow, look at this one.
Another one. Boy, you want
Move my stuff.
some.
Right here, come on, come on. Bring it
Yeah,
up
that's
close
good.
and personal, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Here we go. Those things bite. All right.
So, anyway, not overseeing the architect of the project, this actually evolved over a period of 2 years, 2005, 2007, with the housing committee. And I'm very grateful to the town board and this board also to be considering openly supporting the project. I just want to run through exactly how it evolved architecturally. When we met, and decided that we needed to have some kind of a model that we could use for affordable housing lots that may come up, that may want to be developed. We thought that, first of all, it should look like a farmhouse. And as far as the content, we thought that this would really be a most appropriate mix to have in a single building. A one-bedroom apartment, two two-bedroom apartments, and a three-bedroom apartment within one building. Then we started to look at what would be the best floor plans to have. And we worked together as a committee and we developed these floor plans here that are very typical. So we have a two-bedroom duplex. A three-bedroom could be either one-story or two-story, and a small one-bedroom. Then we decided that in a typical building, we could put these together, just like that. And that's what that model there represents. So these are two-bedroom, two-story units. This is a three-bedroom unit. This is a one-bedroom unit. But they can be assembled in many different combinations. What we started to do is we started to reverse them, and then we started to put them into combinations, and we came up with 40 different combinations. As you can see, the configuration will fit practically any lot that would be available. And these are some of the typical units. Here we just picked 6 of them, and how they could look as farmhouses. And again, that model is pretty representative of what we had in mind. And then when, the elevations here, then when this lot became available, the tennis courts, took a look at it, and we decided that this one, and this one, actually no, this one, and that one would fit and be appropriate for this lot. And so here they are, 1, 2, 3. And we decided to orient them due so that this facade, the roof is facing due south, so they can get solar panels. We decided that the road would sort of meander through the lot. There's a playground over here. There's also access for fire equipment. If we come through here, come through the gate, come around here, so it would be able to turn and serve the complex. This is an overhead view, and this is a panorama, kind of a combined panorama of what the building would look like as we drive through. And as you can see, they would all appear as farmhouse buildings. If you take the model and, excuse me, and you just sort of look at it from this perspective, that's pretty much what you'll see as you approach the road.
Each one's different, right? Nice.
And the Velcro represents solar panels. And these are the individual buildings that were selected, and this is what we have now.
Can I ask a question real quick, sir? You know, there was one concern I had. I think this is great, by the way, but one concern I did have was in reference to emergency service vehicles, and it sounds like you're fine with that because they can kind of filter through and roundabout through the back. A question I would have is, why do you even need a gate in that rear part? That doesn't make much sense to me. Again, it's not just emergency service vehicles, but you have service delivery trucks and things of that nature that might not be able to get through that gated area, correct? I mean, maybe I'm curious about why that would be gated off.
Well, I think, my name, Tom Rule, by the way, for the town of East Hampton, Director of Housing. And interestingly enough, as Marguerite asked me before, I was on the 86 Planning Board, but I don't remember the application either. So, starting to feel old. No, but anyway, it's a good question. We were trying to avoid creating it as a continuous through loop that would develop.
Everyday use, yeah.
So that's why, but we collaterally thought, well, you don't want to really put 2 cul-de-sacs next to each other. That's sort of like, so this is sort of the hybrid solution. But we certainly could go, and I know Dave Weaver has some, because I spoke to him before the meeting, some concerns also about that emergency, and that is something we can certainly revisit.
So, can I just
Yeah,
follow
Joe,
up on
please,
your
go right
question?
ahead.
And I'm really excited to see you guys here, and very excited the town's getting back in the business of doing affordable housing. A fuel truck, for example, comes in, and this is really following up on Reed's question, and makes a delivery to one of these houses. How is it going to turn around? How is that at this point? Without going through the gate?
Well, I would imagine, but, and Dave has pointed out, I know he hasn't spoken yet, but I spoke to him, and he raises a valid point. You know, my feeling was, one of these would be open, you would pull in, you would back out, and go out. But there is something to be said for making it a through, so that we don't.
Well, I wasn't I mean, I think that creates issues for Windmill. They're not gonna wanna have traffic from here coming. No, I'm just wondering at the end, if not a cul-de-sac, some kind of a T or a Y or some way that a sizable truck can turn around without going through the gate and get back out.
Well, this is kind of one of those different situations where typically we will talk to Tom Talmadge about coming up with some solution along those lines. I mean, our engineering work was done by the town engineer, so it's kind of like, yes. So I think that's something we're gonna revisit. I think the board has a valid point, maybe has a valid point about trying to create some way of being able to make deliveries on the site and leave. Just to give a little bit, most people go out of their way to keep me talking less. This originally, the concept, the town has done rental housing and the town has done home ownership. This is a hybrid. This is kind of the ability to take something that someone who may not be able to afford a house, but has enough, a little bit more income than a renter, and buy a condo unit. So it's the first time we've proposed this. Motto went through why it's a template. It could be used elsewhere. But obviously there's a learning curve, and we can benefit from this board and from the Architectural Review Board and the public from, refining this to learn for the future. So, and it's been a long time in the works, as you probably know, and it's had some things. Just to explain, we're hoping to, as John and I found out, because we both went to Albany to try to convince the state of New York to change the law, the condo units the buyers will have to own the land underneath it. We were originally proposing it on leased land, which apparently is illegal in New York State.
If you have a land trust, you could have done it.
Yeah, there's 4 places it's been done. I got it, New York State Senate to pass a change to state law, but.
There's one on Shelter Island. You could have done a land trust, but that would be another animal. Then
Well, as I've had it explained to me, you cannot do condominiums on residential leased land. You can
Right.
do commercial condominiums.
it would be a land trust. The land trust allows you to do that, but you would own the fee title of all of it. They would just own the structure.
Well, that's what we're doing that's the model we've used at Green Hollow, and that's what we're planning on doing here until the condominium attorney said you can't.
Well,
do
it can't, but then, because it can't be a condo, because the state condo
Right.
doesn't allow it. It would have to be a land
Yes.
trust to do that.
But Battery Park City technically is a condo that's been allowed. So I said if they did it for them, they should do it for us, and we almost got that. But anyway, so our plan is to own with a 99-year lease with the homeowners association, everything but the sale of the actual unit with the underlying land, and to protect the property with recapture provisions and with provisions against, so that they stay affordable for want of a better term, perpetuity.
Can I ask some questions while we're on this?
Sure.
Okay. So your structure would be a condominium structure, and you'd have some kind of homeowner association?
Correct.
With an offering plan?
Yes,
Just so you know, 12 units is tough for
yes,
common charges. So, depending on what you have, you don't have amenities, so it's not gonna be like a pool, but you still are gonna have insurance and maintenance of the property. Now, if the town is gonna own the property outside the actual structures, is the town gonna assume the cost of maintaining that?
No, we're
Or is
assuming-
that gonna go to the condo owners?
we're going to lease it to the homeowners association, and we're anticipating, at least initially, that the housing authority, which is a sister agency to the
Right.
town, will be the manager in contact with the homeowners association. Because the housing authority has experience with plowing and
Got
mowing.
that.
and those-
But the offering plan is going to have to,
Yes.
you have to file an offering plan, right?
Yes.
The Attorney General's office.
Yes,
So-
when I got the quote, that's how I found out you can't build condos, was one of
Yeah, right.
the attorney that the town will be hiring as this gets further through the process.
Exactly.
Told me, you can't do that. So that's how we evolved into what we're doing. It's an evolutionary process. You learn on the fly.
But that's good. This is a wonderful concept, and I love, ever since you came up with this architectural design, it's been wonderful.
For the record, Amato has donated
Yes.
his time.
And he is amazing.
Donated this design, and the town actually owns the design. It's been donated, and I have to thank the planning department too, because Joanne Powell originally, who I think may have left, Eric now, Marguerite, of course, being in charge of all of those, the town engineer, and we even got our plant list from the planning department. Because when I found out we didn't have base around here, plantings, we went over to planning and said, okay, what would you like us to plant? So it's sort of one of those, a lot of people working together and gonna hopefully make it happen. I know Dave has some other comments, and I know what some of them are, and some of them are pretty good ideas, but I won't speak for Dave. Anyway, anybody have any other questions?
But you do have a narrative that's going to go into the file. I'm
The
not talking
narrative,
before,
I
but-
put a narrative into the file.
Okay.
I
didn't see it yet.
Me being me, after Eric wrote the memo, I said, what do you think's missing? And he told me, and so I wrote a response.
Okay. And the price of the units, you're going to structure them to 80% and under?
Yes, I mean, we're going to apply, and now this is probably, you will
all right.
completely understand, New York State Affordable Housing Corporation and home money. If we don't get those, then obviously the pricing structure might be slightly different.
But you have home funds you're going to allocate to this?
Oh, well, I don't have them yet, but I mean, I've got, you know
Okay.
how I've talked to the county and
Okay.
be applying for that.
So
AHC,
she'll- All right.
I had an AHC application in, then when the project got killed, I had to kill the application, so I have to refile. That's
Okay.
the New York State Affordable Housing Corporation.
Right. Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Weaver? Yeah, please.
Dave Weaver, first I'm representing East Hampton Ambulance. The fire marshal and fire department were nice enough to call me to their meeting yesterday to see how we felt about this project. The ambulance corps totally supports affordable housing, and we'd hope to get a few members out of this complex. So we totally support affordable housing. The gate concept is we're not in favor of at all, unless you put in a full-size cul-de-sac. That would be our first choice. Because we're going to get in there with an ambulance, and at 3 o'clock in the morning, we don't want to have to jump out and fumble with the key, have the gate not open, any of that. And then, if all the parking spaces are taken, with someone's life in danger, have to back all the way out of there. And some of our drivers won't make it. I hope I will. I will. I'm the driving instructor. But anyway, so the fence itself, as the project is designed, is totally unacceptable. We know we don't get a vote, but hopefully you'll listen to us. A cul-de-sac would be acceptable, a full-size cul-de-sac, so we can make it without having to turn around. That would be preferred. If that doesn't fit, an emergency vehicle turnaround would also be accepted. But our first choice would be the elimination of the gate. Also, the traffic control calming device. Tom Talmadge assured me that it's really smooth. If it's really smooth, it's not going to do its job. And if it does its job, we're opposed to it because we will have patients come out of here on a longboard. And I would love for any of you to lie on a longboard sometime and let me hit a bump. And somebody who already has a seriously injured back, the last thing they need is any kind of a bump on the way. And sometimes we get a little aggressive, we start driving faster, we got a patient screaming in the back. We don't need bumps that we have to go over. So, as I said, if it works, I think it has to have a bump. I've been on enough college campuses that have them. If you can't feel it, it's not doing its job, and people will just drive right over it. It becomes almost a toy for them.
Where are they going to put a bump?
Speed bump.
They want to put a speed bump.
I'm in the middle.
Well,
This one up there.
down in front by the pipeline.
Why? It's a curved road. Why would you want to?
And the bottom line is, as I said, if it doesn't jar you, you're not going to pay any attention to it. You're going to drive fast over it. So if it's smooth, it's not doing its job. So that's a minor issue, and we'll let you make that decision, but I would hope that it's not there. If the gate's not there and we can drive all the way through, then it's not really a concern, because we will not be going out that way. In most cases, if the gate's not there and it's a through street, we'll drive through rather than turn around, because if you ever heard an ambulance at 3 o'clock in the morning, we tend to wake up neighbors. We try in these complexes to turn our lights off, and it's a totally different situation. When the fire department's there, nobody's going to sleep. You know? To be honest, what the fire department comment was, they didn't have a concern about the gate. I'll tell you what they said, because when they're there for hours at a time normally. So if they have to, they'll either back out or they'll open the gate at some point and be able to drive through. But we're not afforded the luxury of time Time for us is very essential. So now I'm going to switch my hats, and now I'm going to speak as myself. And I am also in favor of affordable housing. Just a few things. I looked over the plan because I was asked to. I wouldn't normally even look at this. Special permit condition 4B, I don't believe as designed this meets that requirement. The requirement is for a private space, patio or garden. The only private space that they're talking about here is the balconies on the front, and some units would only have a 4x5 area. I think that should be in the back, where families can sit and have their dinner, or even individuals. And based on the size of the apartments, should reflect the size of patios or gates that are patios or decks that are on the back of the units. I think that this, as designed, like I said, I don't want to cost them any more money, but I think that's a necessity in a complex like this. And I was glad to see that all the units have Bilco doors. I assume that's for storage in the basement. Problem with that is the kids aren't going to put the bikes away. They're going to be scattered all around. And if you look at the other complexes in town, there's bicycles chained to trees, patio furniture chained to trees, all kinds of stuff just stored outside. I'd love to see, personally, I lived in an apartment complex, Pine Hills in Manorville. Every unit had a ground floor small storage area attached to it on the outside. You threw your bicycles in there. My wife threw the baby stroller in there. All that stuff was right there, easy to get to, in and out. As I said, it's just something to think about. That's not a major deal. And the only other thing really is, to be honest, I don't think you have enough parking. These are going to be working families. In most families, the husband and wife are both going to work. And I can envision a 3-bedroom apartment or condo having the husband and wife both working, and I had 4 teenagers who were working 3 out of the 4 working at the same time. I had 5 vehicles in my driveway, and I can imagine that happening here. And there is no guest parking, per se. There's no overflow. I'd love to see it if it's possible without totally blowing the budget. I know they might have coverage concerns. I didn't get a chance to review that, but I think it's just something to be considered, that there should be some additional parking. The first family in here that has their first communion are going to fill the street with cars, and it's going to be a mess. So those are my points as a private citizen.
Thank you.
And by the way, if the Models Board wants help, I'd be happy to assist them in any way I can.
Maybe at this time, this is an initial evaluation. I'd like to go to the board and get some comments and some thoughts, and then if we have some additional questions, we'll call back, call the applicant back up. So at this time, let's go to Pat Schutte and get his input.
Thank you, Reed. We evaluated this, and pretty in-depth quite some time ago. We went pretty far in the planning process with this, talking about traffic and studies. And I don't know why I died from there, but we hashed all this out quite some time ago. And to start with, one, I think we should be lead agency. If we want to vote on it now or wait till after everyone had a chance to comment, but I think we should
Go ahead.
be.
Second.
All in
Make a
favor?
motion to.
Aye.
Be lead
Okay,
agency.
we're lead agency.
All right. This is a great location for this project, and thank you guys for doing this, following through on it, and it's something that's much needed here. This is a perfect location for this. 12 units is not going to add to the intensity of the roads on Accabonac. It's not going to happen. So I'm very comfortable with it as far as the traffic flow, that we do not need a traffic study, or I have no traffic concerns as far as the public road. My biggest concern looking at this, and everyone else has already stated it tonight, is we need I was envisioning a very big turnaround spur to the north, a big one. Dave talked of a cul-de-sac. I don't know if there's room for a cul-de-sac in the back, but I say you have to have a big turnaround spur that's dedicated just to that. We spoke of oil truck. I'm thinking PC Richards coming in, or whoever. There's not, and as Dave stated, there's not much parking here, and I do see all those spots being full. So I think we need to think about that and almost mandate that. There has to be something. I don't know if there's room here for a cul-de-sac. Is there on the property at the end of it? Well, not coverage, but is there room in the end to put a cul-de-sac there? Because coverage is something that can be worked out, for safety.
You may have to move you know, if you can move one of the homes down, one of the structures down,
Well, if
you might be able to put in more parking.
if it replicates the one that Windmill has right now at its end, and maybe you can scroll down a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, this could be an indication of what it could be. I mean, this serves the windmill complex, so just imagine a circle like this over here. But yeah, we'd have to move this parking around.
Well, I would say minimal, that we'd have to require a very large turnaround spur. And if there's going to be a gate there, it can't be locked. I mean, it can't be, if there's going to be a gate, or no gate, just have the road open. One of the two. I don't see many people going all the way through there and going back, but that's something we could kick around and think about a little bit. But that was my biggest concern in looking at this. Moving on, I think we do need a detailed landscape plan, and you're gonna have to go for some landscaping here. You know, in the past, we did the apartments over in Spinks Road, and when it was done, there was no landscaping, nothing, you know. Companies ended up volunteering landscaping there because there was nothing, so it's something that needs to be thought about here. There's going to be a opening where the courts used to be in Acabonic. We're gonna have to think about that, closing that off. So we do need to think about some landscaping. Obviously, we're gonna need a fire service comments. I love the way the buildings are broken up, and each one is different, 1-story, 2-story, and each one is individual in character. I love that. I couldn't add anything to it because it's beautiful. It's going to be a great project. I think Dave had one other comment for you guys to think about, and I don't think there's enough parking as well. You don't want to see so much pavement and so much, you know, of this type of things here on this site, because you've designed a nice site, but reality is reality. You have people over, these are gonna, you know, as Dave said, these are gonna be, you know, families with young adult children, and they're gonna have cars, and they're gonna have their friends over, and you need to think about that a little bit. And those are my initial comments so far.
Traffic impact study,
Absolutely not, no.
Okay.
No. For
12 units?
12 units, no. No.
Okay.
No, and I think we went through that when we did this in the past, and I think we voted against it, but it's a long time ago, and it's a new site plan, but I think we did that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you need a traffic study for 12 homes. Some of them are gonna be one bedroom, so I mean, you're gonna have most 1 or 2 cars. So they're self-limiting, you know, the size of the bedrooms. The 3-bedroom units, yes, you might have more, but the other units, they self-limit how many people are there, but you do need guest parking. You're gonna need that, and that's important. So I think maybe a little shifting of some of this, and again, the clearing restrictions, do we have the power to relax some of those, Marguerite, some clearing restrictions?
Yes, you do.
Absolutely.
We do. So I think for affordable housing, which is so needed, that we might be able to relax some of the clearing restrictions so that you could still keep the houses separated, move them a little bit, allow for a spur, or at least a turn-in, you know, a T, whatever they call that, if it doesn't have to be a circle. I agree with Pat, we shouldn't have that gate closed, but I understand why it's there. Maybe it can be there but not be locked. So it's there to eliminate any daily traffic, but, you know, not really padlocked so that nobody can get around. I don't know. They're seniors up at the, isn't that Windmill, or they're all seniors. What do they care? They're not gonna run around. There's no vandalism. Unless they're a little crazy like me, then there could be.
Oh, they are.
So I think the parking is a major issue. Somebody mentioned basements. These will all have basements? Okay, so that's good for storage, but I also agree with Dave that sometimes that creates a little issue because they won't put the stuff down in the basement because they have to drag it out of the basement, but I'm glad that there are basements for regular family-type storage. But I think tool shed or a large closet, you know, it doesn't have to be huge, but like Dave said, just to put a bike and a, you know, whatever little things you might need during the day. They don't have to do mowing, so they don't need lawnmower garden equipment, but a bike or strollers and stuff like that. And I've seen that in some areas. So if that's something that would be interesting. Then I talked about the grants, I talked about the prices, the common fees, and I would recommend to make sure that your operating budget or whatever, when you do the offering plan for those common fees that the people are gonna need to contribute to every month, you have to factor that into their affordability. And also energy efficiency. Are these going to be built with a lot of, New York State Star kind of requirements?
Yeah, we haven't finalized the HERS rating, which is the.
Yes, I understand the HERS
We
rating.
haven't finalized how high we're gonna go with that.
95. It's high, but you can do it. You can do it because that'll save on your affordability. I mean, I'm just giving you this out of experience. So whoever when you do your bids for a developer, make sure that they're going to be able to give you that kind of savings on energy efficiency. But, and I think orienting them so that they might want to put, kind of the light sensors on there. But other than that, I think that's it. Energy efficiency, basement storage, I'm good. Parking.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Yeah, Pat, go
throw
right
two
ahead.
additional comments, I'm sorry. One, my recommendation would be, instead of a cul-de-sac, a very large turnaround spur to the north, and keeping that gate unlocked. That would be my recommendation to this group. And secondly, I have one additional question, which Dave brought up, which I didn't even think about, was he was talking about sitting areas, outdoor areas in front of the apartments. And can you comment on that, instead of the back of it, instead of the back of the units?
Well, there is a small porch in front of each unit.
To the back?
No, at the front.
Right.
We actually had considered patios at the beginning. I'm not quite sure how that.
It was in the narrative, it never got put back on the actual site plan.
Well, it would be a good consideration, because they might have barbecue or something in their own little space, and sometimes they have the fences in between, so you have a little slab, and then you have a little privacy area, so that you can do some outside stuff as a family. I've seen in other complexes.
I think it's a consideration for the applicant to think about that.
Just to,
Yeah, it's a good suggestion.
Okay. How are you, Ian?
Yeah, this is the first time I've seen the project. I understand it's been around for a while. I appreciate the collaborative, spirit of everybody involved, including Mr. Weaver and the applicants and Tom. As far as the cul-de-sac goes, I agree there needs to be some turnaround, not only for emergency vehicles, but for daily deliveries and things like that. I hate redundancy, so if there were a way, I realize that you'd have to work it out with Windmill Village. If there were a way to have an unlocked gate where you could share that cul-de-sac, I think that's ideal. However, there may be hurdles involved. If that's not possible, I don't think it's necessary to have a full cul-de-sac there, but a large turnaround and still have that emergency gate that could be used in the case of some sort of emergency. But again, if there were a way to leave that gate open and just share that cul-de-sac, I think that's ideal. I hate to create more pavement unnecessarily. I think it's a generally good project. I know that Diana and Tom certainly know a lot more about affordable housing than I do, and the types of things that are good. So the patio in the back sounds great to me. But again, I think that this is the first time I've seen it. You'll discuss it and probably improve upon the plan. The speed bump, I'm not a fan of speed bumps in general, and I think that Mr. Weaver's comments are pretty spot on there. I think that there's another way to enforce speed if it's a problem there. I think that permanent bump might not be the solution. Parking, it'd be great to see more parking. Again, I'm not an expert in the area, so if there was a narrative that explained that this is in step and fits with this type of project, I'd be okay, because I know it meets our code, but my instinct is the same as the previous board members, which is more parking would be better. And on that same line, I think that, I certainly would be willing to relax some of these, some clearing restrictions and coverage and things like that in order to create more parking. And it seems like there's an area to put a couple more spots on each little mini lot there. The only other thing I see that hasn't been talked about is the entrance is very close to Windmill next door. If the engineer has no problem with that, I guess I don't either. It seems like, two driveways very, very close to each other could create a safety concern. Again, that's, I'm not a professional in that area, so if, my thought would be maybe flipping that driveway. I know there's a residence on the other side that might create a problem, but again, I would just want the engineer to comment on that. He's probably already thought about it. Otherwise, I'm very supportive of the project. I think it's a great idea. I think the cul-de-sac or turnaround has to be taken care of. Parking has to be looked at a little bit further. But it sounds like there's a good collaborative spirit amongst everybody involved, and I think we're going to end up with a very good plan. Landscape plan has to happen. But it sounds like you're already working with the planning department on that. So thank you for bringing this before us. I hope it happens, and I hope it happens soon.
Joe Potter?
Yeah, I think I agree with really everything that's been said. It's an intriguing idea to share the cul-de-sac. My concern, if you could share the cul-de-sac without having the traffic go back out, but my concern is that, adding all the traffic from these 12 units, leaving to an existing property that's been designed for the amount of traffic it creates, I'm sure that Windmill would, it could be dangerous. But really, I think if you can, I know there are financial constraints, but if you can create a patio situation where people can be outside in the back and be comfortable. I love the idea of an attached shed, if it's possible to do that. I do think that in general, and I know there are financial constraints, we have, as a town, not done enough in terms of landscaping. St. Michael's being an example in my mind. Great project, but, it needed landscaping. I really agree with all the suggestions. I think it's been very helpful.
Okay. How are you, Nancy Keeshan?
I as well, I agree with everything that's been said, and I'm really excited that the town is supporting the affordable housing, which is so needed. And parking, I'm looking at 5 spots in front of 8 bedrooms. It just looks like it's just not going to be enough. So more parking, and agreed that there's a turnaround, and that's about it.
Well, I support the site plan as well. I think we all do. I think it's a positive development for the community. I think we pretty much all agree that the location is acceptable. There seems to be a little bit of concern about the parking, perhaps. That's something that perhaps we might need to revisit. Not everyone here commented on a traffic study. Personally, I don't foresee I don't think a traffic study is needed for this particular project. We did require it, I think we did for St. Michael's, and that was 40 units, right? Yes. Yeah. I guess my last comment would be, again, I don't really see the need for that gated access at the back. I would just eliminate it, but if you want to make a cul-de-sac or whatever, I think that would be a sensible solution as well. So maybe at this time we'll go into the consensus. Again, the planning board is declared lead agency. The applicant has put forward a written narrative, I believe, detailing the various aspects of the nature of the proposed use.
Did we get that, Reed?
I think we did, as a matter of fact, and there were details about who would qualify for this sort of a project. It shows income levels, number of family members. This was handed in yesterday, by the way, so you might not have received it yet. Here it is right here, Joe, if you want to take a quick look. In reference to landscaping,
We need a full landscape plan.
is everyone okay with that? A
Yep.
full landscape plan? I think that makes some sense. Maybe it's a little early to get into this, but, the proposed lighting plan, Pat, do you have any comments on that?
No, they're gonna have to submit a lighting plan.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of just a standard operating procedure. You have to submit the lighting plan. Traffic study is not necessary. And do we want to send any formal written comments to the ARB?
I'm in favor of that. No, I don't know if we need to send it. It's their
Not at
job
this
to do this
point.
and guide us, so.
They're beautiful.
Yeah, they
They're
are.
gonna
Yeah, it
look
looks really
lovely.
nice.
They're gonna look very, very nice, and the fact that you have all roof lines, and it's beautiful design. Congratulations, I'm so happy that eventually it's gonna happen, Amada. You did an amazing job, thank you so much. You've said before.
Ian,
A long time
comments?
in coming.
No, I would like to hear their opinion on the architecture, although it seems very beautiful to me. I'm generally in favor of the project, but I don't want to steer them against doing their job.
Okay. Comments?
It didn't come to the whole board.
What's that?
It didn't come to the whole board. That was only, I was just acting like we could all be copied on it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it said to members of the planning board as well.
I think it was just delivered tonight.
I thought I got one when I got
Okay.
here tonight.
All right, I'm not, it's
No,
fine now.
okay.
I'll
Do
put
you
one
want comments? ARB, are you okay? Send comments or?
No, I don't think, I'd like to hear back from the ARB, though.
Yeah,
what
of
their-
course.
And they will.
Their
They'll
comments
send
are
it.
back to us, yeah.
Nancy, you don't need to send
No,
comments.
no.
Okay. So-
I'll also, just so you know, because the wrap-up elements go in the planning board's post-meeting memo, I'll
Yeah.
incorporate the comments that were made. I think there seemed to
Good.
be a general consensus about at least a turnaround, looking into a cul-de-sac, the patio areas, those items, so, just so you know.
So,
Get the gate on.
thank you for your time. Did you want your models back?
I like the green foliage better than the brown.
That's a fall motif, come on.
So our next site plan review is going to be Hampton Racket at Green Hollow.
Okay, this was postponed from a previous meeting. The applicants submitted a narrative, and based upon the wording of the narrative, it sounds like they also run a tennis club and a day camp. So the day camp, we've traditionally had applicants go and get a semi-public facility special permit for that type of use. So the applicant should submit that, the required fees, and that should be part of this application. There's a item on here illustrated as a garage, and I went to the site. It appeared that it wasn't being used as a garage, that it was some kind of store, but the applicants can address that and what the use of that building is. The site plan, right now, they submitted a revegetation plan, which is this plan here, and then they also have a survey from before, but we don't have a site plan based off a survey that illustrates every, proposed, existing and proposed structure. Right now, they're not differentiated, which includes coverage calculations and all the elements that you need in the site plan. Basically, it's spread out across two plans right now, and we need one formal site plan. So I'll go back to the re-veg plan because it has more details here. 60-foot setbacks, doubled setbacks are going to be required along most of the property lines here as it borders a residential district. However, the board can relax that doubled setback requirement when they border non-residential property. You can see on the aerial that this line across the north here is the railroad tracks. So I wouldn't see any harm in waiving the added setbacks in that case, but you would need to determine for sure whether or not you'd allow that. Parking, they've illustrated 52 parking spaces throughout the site, which is what they're required from the previous site plan approval. They've illustrated 25 of them as grass parking. The planning board can allow up to 50% of the parking as grass parking if you think that it's appropriate based upon seasonality. It does seem that the day camp use is probably more of a summertime use. Also a tennis club, it's outdoors, would be more seasonal. So basically, they're proposing this as a gravel parking lot in the southern area, and then this is an overflow grass parking area north of it. There's also a second access point and 8 parking spaces that are proposed along this side of the property coming off of Buckskill Road, and you'll need to determine whether or not that's appropriate. The applicants can speak to why they feel they need that second access point. It was stated at an earlier meeting that they want emergency services access. This will, at the very least, need to be redesigned a little bit because the parking spaces need to meet the 60-foot setback from each of these two property lines. But it does look like they could fit a second access coming in off Buckskill Road. They're proposing to remove this tennis court in this area here. They could put a parking area either up in here or situated, a little bit differently. They could dimensionally fit it within the regulations, but you should discuss with them whether or not that second area is appropriate. They had added a 13th tennis court, which they couldn't, fit on site because of the regulations, which was this one right here. They're now proposing to keep that one, but to remove this westernmost one, which is near a residence. They did, which is acceptable, brings them down to 12, which is what they're approved for. This one they've converted to a practice court. You could look at it as though that's not a full tennis court, and that would affect their parking requirement. I don't know that, I could see the other side of it too. If it's a practice court, people would be using it. It affects the use of the site. So that is something that you might want to contact the chief building inspector to determine whether or not that's technically a tennis court because the parking requirement is based off the number of tennis courts. So that's one issue. The applicants, this revegetation plan here, myself, Lisa DeAndrea from the planning department met with the applicants and determined what the pre-existing amount of clearing was. The revegetation plan seems to meet the requirements. We find it acceptable. There's no info on lighting submitted. We had previously recommended and still do that a comprehensive site lighting plan be submitted. The property's in the middle of a residential neighborhood. I don't know that they don't have too many structures here, but if they're gonna be lighting the playing courts, that's of course a concern when they're in close proximity to residential property. With regard to landscaping, no information about landscaping has been submitted. You do have a re-veg plan here. I would think that it would be prudent, there's not a whole lot of room here where this parking lot is. You can see this berm and line of trees that's illustrated on the plan. It's actually on the neighbor's property. I do think that if there's anything that the applicants could fit along that line there, landscaping should be added in that area of the site. Additionally, there's a big area up here where it looks like more screening could be provided. I think there's a lot going on this property. It's right in the middle of a residential neighborhood. It's prudent to require as much screening and landscaping as possible. The ARB has no comments. The town engineer has a memo. I won't go through everything individually, but the applicant should address his comments. He has 5 issues, and he says that he does not find the engineering element satisfactory. And with that, it seems that the application is incomplete.
Thank you, Mr. Shantz.
Ask Eric a question.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Eric, I'm sorry, a little confused, but I guess that would be the western end of the property. They're looking to put a second access in there and parking, clear more?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, I mean, right now there is like a path that they cleared to there. But this plan, the new revegetation plan that they've submitted, shows that area and then relocates some parking over in that area. So that's what they're proposing to you right now.
Okay.
And do we have that? I mean, what are they, just that?
This is the only new plan that you have.
Okay.
Thank you. Is there someone here this evening who'd like to comment on this memo?
Members of the Planning Board, Tiffany Scarlato, 45 Division Street, Sag Harbor, for the applicant. I guess we'll just start by addressing sort of the elephant in the room tonight, which is the use issue. We do intend to amend the application for a semi-public use for children's programs, seasonal children's programs. And I would point the board, as an accessory use to the tennis club, and I would point the board to a May 1998 Zoning Board of Appeals decision, which verifies that in fact is a legal accessory use for that property. Just by way of background, with regard to the tennis club, it is a community-based club whose mission is to provide access for a tennis experience for all of days gone by, for all of the activities that a modern 21st century club must provide. I would point you back again to the 1998 decision, and we'll make a written submission to the board with all of this included. But in that decision, it also points out that due to the seasonal nature of tennis clubs and for economic reasons, it's important that area tennis clubs operate children's programs on a seasonal basis. As you know, the clubs have had to change over the years and now offer a lot of other things other than just tennis, and that's part of what the community has, part of what this applicant has done, and it wants to see move forward in that direction. So we are going to amend the application to add that as a semi-public facility use.
Another question is, what's going on with that garage that you sell?
I don't know. I was there probably about 20 minutes before I arrived here, and there is nothing but storage in the garage.
Okay, and then in reference to the access point that apparently the neighbors are not happy with, is there a reason it stops right there? I mean, could you somehow kind of extend that out? And I would assume you want that for emergency services vehicles?
That was the issue, was that there was an issue on one of these tennis courts in the back, and they did have to try to get emergency access. It's pretty difficult to get it through this location to try to get an ambulance in there. So the issue really became having an emergency access. So I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, that parking lot's not in conformance where it is, right? It doesn't meet the setbacks.
I think we do have an alternative plan. Britton was going to address a lot of the site plan issues, but we do have an alternative plan that does meet the 60-foot setbacks.
Okay.
Hi, Britton Bistrian, also for the applicant, Hampton Racket. To address that specific issue right here, Eric brought up that this parking area would have a 60-foot setback from the two residential property lines here. So it literally is a minor shifting. That's not an issue to meet it. I have a schematic of it, and it's like a 10-degree shift in exactly this same configuration.
Can you show that again, what your proposal?
Sure. It's basically exactly the same, except for I put the red setback lines on. And it was just clipping this last parking spot, so
Okay.
it sort of just rotated
I
it a little
can't
bit.
see that, those are parking areas on there, on the big.
Yes,
Okay.
this is Buckskill Road here.
Yep.
The purpose of this is that the parking for the club and the tennis courts really is something that people come in, they play for an hour and they leave. This would be more along the lines of someone comes to go to work for the day, they park here, they walk up to the club, they don't go back to their car until the end of the day. It's a one-time used park, and it just site-wise made sense to distinguish the two. And also this has always been a pretty wide 6-foot, it says footpath, but it was more of a wider path than that. And that, if you look through the aerials going back as far as I looked at 62 on GIS, and it's always been there. It got widened, and they started to use this as an access, and that all was because of a medical event that happened on this court. And you can't physically get any further, you can't drive any vehicles from here. It's a pretty long stretch, it's about 800 feet. There's no access to those, so it just seemed like a logical, low-impact way to be able to have another egress from this site and also have employee parking over here.
Britton, maybe I'm still a little unclear. Why don't you just extend that out? You're going to be removing that tennis court right up in that corner, correct?
Oh, you mean extend it up to here?
Yeah. I mean, I don't understand why you wouldn't unless.
Sure, I mean, if you mean, say, move the parking where the court is?
That would
Then
be
we
sensible,
almost use
wouldn't
the
it?
improved surface. Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
Another
We
thing to
could-
consider, just to throw it in while
but-
we're discussing,
Good idea.
is a turnaround, emergency turnaround.
Yeah, right up there.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It
Okay.
doesn't seem like it's
That's a
dimensioned for
great
a
idea.
turnaround. If you could almost have a turnaround in the front part of that back court, and the parking, continue behind that, so it's away from the residents and.
Yeah, we'll absolutely integrate that into the next plan.
Well, before you say that, I don't know about that, but
Okay.
I'm sorry to ask questions, but
Yeah,
I'm
go ahead.
really
No,
confused by this
totally.
application. You're gonna revegetate an awful lot, I mean, more than half an acre. Where is that revegetation going? I thought it was going over here, that's why
That was-
I'm shocked about this.
The only way
Shocked
that we
about this
could
parking area over there. you're proposing.
accomplish the revegetation was finding large pockets. So we have, 4,000 square foot here, 4,000 square foot here, a couple thousand square foot here, 4,000 here. It's all in pockets. And then this court, and then this is actually the neighbor's mowed lawn, and that's about 6,000 square feet right there that will revegetate. It's not the neighbor's lawn. It's on this
Right.
property. It's been functioning as a mowed lawn for the neighbor for many years. An encroaching issue.
So they've encroached on that.
Yes, but there's now a fence, and now the lawn looks like it's strange in the middle of the woods.
And where was the relief for the setback to the railroad track?
Because of this strange property configuration, if you can imagine, if you start to drive 60-foot setbacks on all these
Right.
jagged edges, we were asking for relief. This is the Long Island Railroad along this property line. We were asking for relief from this property line not to have to meet a 60-foot setback. Just to give you some scale, this court right here is 17 feet off of that property line. So to meet 60 with the little sheds that service the courts, it's incongruent with the way the site was designed. So we were asking the planning board to relax that 60-foot setback from the Long Island Railroad, solely that property line, which you have the power to do. And there was also precedence at Hampton Country Day, who also operates a tennis camp on the Long Island Railroad off the same street. The planning board relaxed the setback for them,
So it's
the
another
railroad.
situation where you have a neighbor that is not going to be ever anybody.
Yep.
So that's another example of why we would
Well,
want
that's
to
the only
be.
side we can relax it.
Yeah.
And then just to go over the other little minor site plan
issues, not the use. The garage, I don't know what it looked like when you were there. It's possible that they were storing camp T-shirts in there. But the garage is used for they have golf carts that do maintenance on the property. It's used for storage of outdoor items, and that's it. It's not a retail store. It might have been product in shuffle, or I don't know what it looked like when Eric was there, but it's a storage use in that building. And then we'll address, Tom's list. We've addressed all those items. The reason that we didn't struggle with I found that I could show more in terms of proposed revegetation and proposed layout on this instead of going to Walbridge and waiting a couple months. Everyone's really busy to revise a site plan survey over and over again. I thought we would hammer down the issues on this, and then we'll submit one final proposed survey from Walbridge along with this. I'll convert it to a revegetation plan, landscaping plan. We're happy with any landscaping, and the board would like screening. The owners is a major participator in Long Island Native Plant Initiative, so landscaping is something that we absolutely welcome. In terms of lighting, I sort of struggle with that. I didn't add it to this because the club, it's dark and the club's closed. There's not a single light on this entire site. And to start throwing lights up, I feel like that's it's worked for 25 years with no lights. Literally, there's 4 lights on the building at the 4 egress doors. I don't really feel the need for adding more lighting. There's nothing that goes on at the night. It gets dark and the place is empty. So to have to light our parking lots or light the site for use that doesn't exist, I think that's incongruent with the way that we use the property. But I'm happy to give you all the 4 lighting fixtures that are at the doors are all dark sky compliant, and they meet New York State Building Code for foot candles at an egress door. I'm happy to submit that to the board's files, but I was not planning on addressing a lighting plan further than that. I talked to Tom Talmadge about his memo. I was a little confused about one of the items, and he did clarify there was a 20-foot width. So he's asking for 20-foot here and 20-foot here where we had 18 and change. I'm happy to address that. Happy to address the handicap parking spaces. He was saying that there's a handicap parking space, but we need to provide handicapped access to one of the courts. We'll put in an impermeable surface that would meet ADA code. And in terms of the semi-public facility use, we looked at a lot of other tennis clubs in East Hampton Indoor Tennis, Ross, Amagansett East Side, Hampton Country Day, and the best parallel was Amagansett East Side, and they, the way that the parking calculations were figured were based on the courts, which is what we have, the 52, and then the semi-public facility use was based on the number of employees for the camp use. So in our next rendition, we'll give a calculation and justify the number of spots that we have. I think that's all I have to address on the site plan issues, but I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank
Or
you.
Tiffany.
Oh, go ahead, Joe.
Just relaxing the setback applies to one court?
No.
Or,
It doesn't reply,
so I guess my question is really, what's approved on the existing site plan?
probably easier to say what's not approved.
Okay.
Just to, let's
Sure,
flip that
yeah,
over.
sure, okay.
So that was the laundry list that Tom Priato gave you, which is, there's an asphalt apron, a gravel apron, a shed,
Then the one court, the practice.
and this court right here.
Right, so that was my question. So the
So I
others,
guess we would be asking you to relax it
for
because
that,
it is
for that one court?
that one
Because the
court.
others are legal,
This is-
they're pre-existing.
Correct.
Right, okay. So it's great, I think it's really great to get the camp under the proper approval, and go for the special permit. Is this where the hockey is, or is that the other?
No.
That's
Okay.
Buckskill.
That's on the other side of the tracks.
Oh, same as the side of the tracks, okay.
Thank you, Britton. We'll call you back up
Okay.
if we have some additional questions. This is Bob Schaefer's application. He's not here, so Pat Schudy's been kind enough to take the lead on it.
Thank you, Reed. Well, that was enlightening, and that answered quite a few of my questions. I might not agree with where you're headed with it, but I do understand what you're thinking now. First, I agree that this is a semi-public facility and that needs to be submitted. You know, this is a road that has, you know, 3 or 4 of these facilities. They've been there since the 60s. It's there. It's a nice looking site when you pull in. It's very attractive and well kept. But there's, you know, 8, 9, 10 neighbors, residential neighbors to this, and some of them aren't happy, and we need to address those concerns. And I was kind of shocked when I saw tonight that you're looking to put a road in on the western end of the property and a parking area. And I'm wondering if maybe that could be mitigated somehow. I'm just talking, instead of eliminating that one court at the end, maybe eliminating one by the parking area and putting more all in the interior where you know, most of that activity happens now, and reconfiguring it that way somehow. I'm just speaking out loud, and I want the rest of the board to weigh in, but I am concerned about this, you know, looking for another road and more parking when you have a lot going on in this site and some contentious neighbors.
Can I ask a quick question on that? It's my understanding that road currently exists, is that not right?
There's a dirt pathway in there.
There
It's
is?
not really
Okay.
Well, that was a point of contention the last time
Yeah,
this
because
came
people were
before us.
parking there.
They're saying that was new, you know, the neighbors, and I'm not here to hash it out whether the road is new or not, but, I mean, in any commercial site, you're not supposed to use 100% of it. And, you know, and it needs to be natural areas, and I was assuming that's what that area was gonna be the last time we looked at this. So, those are my concerns, my comments. I'm not saying how I think it should be or not. I want to hear from the rest of the board, but I think we should direct the applicant tonight. I am okay with relaxing the setbacks on the railroad. You know, this facility's been here for a very long time. It's not affecting anyone by this. It's not going to, you know, I don't see any concerns with that. Revegetation, I'm wondering, you know, just speaking out loud, I mean, should they be directed more towards the neighbors in the front than these little pockets in the back? You know, if we're gonna re-landscape, and if we're gonna do this work, I mean, maybe there's a way to get a road through here somewhere. I mean, I see in between these structures of getting a road, not all the way to the end, but to the second court over, the second 2 over from the north there. So, I think there's some other options here than putting a road in a parking area on that, to me, what's a wooded lot, and it's gonna affect the neighbors. Yeah, that's it for right now. I want to hear from the rest of the board. Maybe we can go around again and help guide the applicant here.
How about you, Diana Weir?
I have no problem with releasing the setback on the railroad. I agree with Pat a little bit about the pockets of revegetation, but my question is, why is that road slanted southeast why wouldn't you put the road right through the middle of the property if you're gonna have a road? So it's equally far away and probably right across from the Mark Twain Lane, which is a better traffic configuration where you'd have, you know what I mean? It's like right up against this guy's house.
I think because that's the way they did it. It's done.
Well, undid it. Revegetate that and make a road where it's supposed to be planning-wise. I got it, I got that, but you have to revegetate anyway, so why not make that road, you have a big chunk of land there, make it in the middle where it's far away from both neighbors, and put in a proper entrance with parking. I mean, that to me, an opposite an entrance, you know, opposite a road that's there, so you have an actual road-to-road entrances along that road, instead of having an entrance here and then, you know what I'm saying? That's usually when you make street cuts, you try to make them cross the road from each other. So that's I don't know how much it costs, but if you're gonna revegetate, then I'd revegetate along those neighbors' houses, like Pat said, so that they wouldn't see anything, and that would mitigate those 2 guys. The one in the back, that's been there forever, so I don't know. But that's my revegetation road concern, that's it.
Oh, good comments. How about you, Ian?
Yeah, I remember the last time this came before us, and the road that's in question now was sort of only for emergency vehicles, and now parking has popped up there, which I totally understand and don't necessarily oppose, but I'm happy that we're now getting the more appropriate application with the special permit for semi-public use and the road listed as it's going to be used. I'm a little confused by the dimensions of it, how it really could be used for emergency services, because it's not a great turnaround. I know you might be up against coverage issues and things like that, but to me, if you were to have a road come in farther away from that neighbor, as Ms. Weir pointed out, and then maybe some sort of cul-de-sac or turnaround in the front part of where that court to be eliminated currently exists, and maybe parking beyond that, so it's tucked by the railroad tracks, I think you're gonna do the most you can do to have access from that area from the north, and also mitigate the, you know, the downside to the neighbors. Along those same lines, I have no problem relaxing the setbacks on the railroad tracks, even though it's not a huge part of this application, because most of it already exists. So if you could do that coverage-wise, I would agree with moving that driveway away from that neighbor, having a turnaround in the front part of the disturbed area where the court already exists, and parking maybe behind that or something along those lines. Again, you might be up against it coverage-wise. I agree with Mr. Schutte about revegetation, trying to focus on the neighbors. I know this has been here for a while, but I do think that you have to provide certainly some screening on that side, and if you could focus your revegetation on those areas too, all the better. You know, tucking this towards the railroad tracks, the farther away you get from those residences, I think it's gonna be better. I know there's screening on neighboring properties, so functionally, there might already be screening in place, but now that you're coming before us with site plan, I think it's appropriate that on your property, you also provide a buffer and screening for those residences. It sounds like the other stuff is all details. I know in the memo, it referred to those courts, the 4 practice courts, which, by the way, I don't understand how you plan a court that small, maybe with a wiffle ball, but I'm not a tennis guy. But my thought is, in terms of how it applies to parking, is there's 4 of them, so assuming there was only 1 person in each court, that's 4 people, that's what doubles would be, so I think it should probably be called a court. The reason you're gonna be playing there is because the other ones are in use, I would think. You might have a narrative that says otherwise, so I would not be in favor of not counting that as a court for parking. However, if we want to refer that to Tom Priato, the building inspector, I'd be fine with that too. So, yeah, I mean, those are my general thoughts. I think you got to do everything you can to mitigate the effect on the neighbors, and you know, take what I said with a grain of salt in terms of that turnaround and the parking. But if that purpose of that road is mainly for emergency services, you got to show that it's appropriate for emergency services. So.
Okay. Joe Potter?
Yeah, you know, as far as the road in the west end goes, the answer might be to have it be, not have any parking there at all, and just have it emergency access only, and have it signage saying that. And, you know, it's been mentioned a number of times that their neighbors may have feelings about this, and I kind of feel in this dialogue like they're missing. And, you know, maybe Bob Schaefer has talked to them, or maybe some of you know who they are. But I'd rather hear from the neighbors before the public hearing, which is at the end of our process, and just get some input from them. I don't know how you do that, Marguerite, but.
Didn't we hear?
No, I'm asking.
I think
But
we
you see what I'm saying, because I don't.
invite a letter with any objections before
Well,
the public
maybe,
hearing.
I'm just throwing that out there that, you know, when the public hearing comes, when all the work is done. So I just put that out there, maybe
Didn't
the
we hear?
neighbors are watching.
We definitely
Tell
heard
us what
from
you think.
one gentleman
did
last
hear-
time.
Okay, this is the
Yeah,
first time
before,
I've heard
yeah,
this, I think.
yeah.
In general, I'm okay with what's going on.
There were a lot of complaints about this road and it being used for parking and extra clearing going
Okay.
on. So I think that's,
That's the
This is-
focus?
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, how about you?
I also like the idea of leaving it dark. And, you know, that might end up being a condition in the approval ultimately, if it's going to be left dark, that it,
Yeah, that's fine. If they're not proposing lighting throughout the site, then
I'm sure the neighbors
I
don't
didn't-
want to see it lit, because that just opens
And
a
as
whole
long as,
other
well,
thing.
Nothing bad
as long as
happens
it's locked
when
up
it's dark.
when it's dark, so someone doesn't stumble in and then there's a real problem. Oops. I'm sorry.
I'm done. No, I'm done.
Obadinsky.
No, no.
Let me look at these things. I remember hearing from the neighbor, and I too, I'm just, parking, getting in there is a problem. You know, what was once a nicely wooded lot. I'm afraid that in August, it's going to become a busily used road for parking, even if we didn't plan it to be that way. So it's really important what we decide here as a board. Whether, I'd like to see if the court that's going to be abandoned, maybe some parking up there. And as Job suggested, maybe a well-marked, simple emergency access straight through the middle. And whatever we can do to protect that that beautiful private area there, that heavily wooded area, is important to me. I like the special, the making it a semi-public facility. I think that's a nice idea. I'm fine with relieving the setbacks. That's a good idea. And second access, and I think that's it. That's all I have to comment on right now.
Okay, so it sounds like you guys are going to work with the engineer on some of these elements. You're going to go for the special permit, so that solves those first couple questions. It sounds like everyone on the board is fine with waiving the setbacks and adjacent to Long Island Railroad. You know, I think that second access is important. I think the town, quite frankly, has an exposure if we don't grant that access, and you have someone who really needs help on one of those far courts. You know, I think having an access is sensible. I like Dinah Weir's comment where you could almost have an access that lines up directly with Mark Twain, and maybe take it all the way through to where that tennis court's to be abandoned, or even push the parking up adjacent to the railroad tracks, or, you know, something along those lines. That's a detail we can work out at a later time. So, and I think the board is fine with no lighting. I mean, if it's no activities at nighttime, it really doesn't make sense to put in lighting. So I think the only item that we really have here, I think we've answered pretty much everything. How about, does the board find the quantity and location of grass parking spaces acceptable?
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Yeah, Pat, go ahead.
One other thing here. If they eliminate one of these courts by the parking area, they're gonna get 17 more spots there. And kept that last court at the end. I mean, and that's where all the parking is anyway. It just makes sense that it's all in here.
Well, maybe we should go to the
I mean,
chief
it's up
building
for them to
inspector and
design
ask
it,
them,
but- well, why the building inspector? But,
well, doesn't he have to determine if whether or not these,
no, but instead of putting them in the woods where the neighbors are gonna be, you know, revegetate that, take out one of these courts here, keep that one there, and you just gotta find a way to get a road through here somehow. I think that would mitigate all the concerns with the neighbors as well.
well, that's a good point, Pat. I mean, I do remember when this came up, was it last year, Eric? We discussed this, and,
Yeah.
you know, I remember a neighbor did come with pictures, and I remember seeing pictures of this dirt road, and cars were all over the place, and, you know, I can imagine living next door to that, it would be a little unsettling, so.
So that's what I would propose to the applicant. I mean, I'm not here to design it, but I think that would just answer
That's a good option.
every concern, and
It doesn't answer the emergency service concern unless
But
they find a
get
road.
I mean, it's their property, make it, move a building, do something.
Yeah, but
It
it's
doesn't have
opening
to go
it.
to the end court,
No,
get it over
no.
here somewhere, you know? I
It's
think
true.
it's easy enough to do from the interior.
Because that's where most of the activity's going on.
Right.
So if you have to get somewhere, you have to get there fast,
And
not
I
over to the
just-
other side.
That's where I would push the applicant to go with this.
That's a great idea.
You could just make the blanket statement that you want the applicant to look at different parking arrangements.
Yeah.
And then, you know,
Options.
I'll work with Britton, and we could do something that has, you know,
Keep
an
that.
access here and a parking space over here, or alternatively, I think really Pat is focusing on this court right here specifically.
Right, but if you cut that in half, Eric, and
Yeah.
just change, you know, so they still had one court there.
Yeah, but then this area could be used for extra parking, so.
And then keep the court up in the top there, because you have a court
Yeah.
there, why don't you?
You know, that's not affecting anyone over there.
So you still have the same number of courts.
And
Yeah,
really think
go ahead,
about
Britt.
screening the neighbors.
I think there's two things I really want to point out about the site. It is not a typical configuration of a property.
Obviously.
And the distance from this court right here to this parking lot is about 1,000 feet. I think the scale is lost on this.
But
And
that
I really
court-
welcome you to go there and walk to the site. The idea that you would, and this was just something that was thrown out earlier, the idea that you would somehow make a road through here, you're not driving through the middle of a tennis club with camp going on. That's just nonsensical. We're not gonna put, the purpose of this parking configuration is isolating parking, keeping that away from the activities of the club and keeping it, keeping it on the periphery. We don't wanna put any more cars driving in and out than you need to. This was used, I think my words got a little twisted. It was, the reason this road went in, it was used for an emergency, it was a footpath, and at one event, it was used for emergency egress. At that point, they said, wow, if that ever happens again, we'd really like to have that emergency egress.
But then what were the pictures that we saw that was all parking on there?
There's a lot of parking going on.
I don't know the pictures you're referring to.
Oh, yeah, there were definitely
There were.
pictures of
Well, and now
multiple
parking is
cars.
proposed
There
too,
were.
so it's not so out of line to think
Yeah.
that it'd be used for parking.
Right, and we're more than happy, I think that was a really wise comment to say, you're taking out of this surface right here, and I'll give you a plan and I'll put the parking up here. That's fine. I just don't want to lose sight of the distance from here to here and the need for a second means of egress and the logic of having employee parking who come in once in the morning and leave once in the afternoon and putting that somewhere else. This is not a, Nancy, I believe you said, summer, August. This would not be summer, August, and we would be happy to covenant that this is employee parking only, emergency access.
But what about moving that road to the middle so it's away from his
Absolutely.
house?
This was purely arbitrary. This was where the road fell because that's where.
Okay,
it was
so
the
you wouldn't have a
easiest
problem,
point for me to be.
because
Put
if
it right in the
you
middle
re-veg,
or
yeah,
put it wherever you want and we'll put a 20-foot buffer on both
That's-
property lines of
that's-
greenery.
that's
And
kind of
we're
what I'm
happy to
saying,
do
so that
that.
people wouldn't park there, you'd have greenery there, and it would be
Right.
truly
We'll move
just
the
a road.
parking onto this court and I'll figure out a configuration and with some sort of turnaround.
Do you-
And I'll come back with that.
Do you need more parking?
We need
Or
to.
is this just a byproduct of the needing
The
emergency access?
planning board approval from 1984 mandates that the property has 52 parking spots. They did not mandate that they were constructed. They could be on lawn area, and the way that their lawn area in this loose plan was filed, it doesn't actually, our code doesn't allow for that much parking in the area that they had delineated in 1984.
what-
So I'm working with a 1984 number with 2014 code.
And what's there now? How many parking
It's
places?
not delineated. It's probably,
All right.
we
I mean,
have this overflow lot that's a grass lawn. They don't use it. It's underutilized. There's never 52 cars parked there.
Because I'm just going back to looking at the aerial, to Pat's comment, which is that there is a house, right? If you
there
start
is,
developing parking on the west end of the property, there's a house right there.
We can advocate the idea of this parking. We'll move it up to the tracks.
No, I don't think that helps, though, if you look at the aerial,
it
because the
doesn't,
house
you're
is right up by the tracks.
Still like,
I'm just,
But that court's being taken away. It's not going to be any closer to the house than the
I
court already
understand, I'm
is.
just kind of agreeing with the thought that maybe there should be no parking at that end of the property at all. Just do an emergency access and develop the parking you need centrally
But-
located.
I would be happy to sit down with Eric and see if you can
All right,
find 8
just-
spots in this part of the.
Eliminate one of those courts.
eliminate, I'd like to.
But that's the heart, this is the heart, you gotta remember, this is the clubhouse, this is the heart of a tennis club. So the immediate perimeter diameter around a club, these are where, when you have a professional person come play, they play on this court, this court, this court, this court, and the reason that this court was put in. That is the heart of it. These are extraneous. As the further you get from a clubhouse, the less interest
But-
you have, the worse tennis player you are. To lose a court right here.
Well, you get more
Track to the
exercise.
other side.
But you don't have enough parking now, that's the issue on the table?
We don't have enough parking for the site plan approval from 1984. No. Do we have enough parking for the
In
property
reality.
to function? Yes.
Well, then maybe.
But I'm not looking to, I don't think I even.
What is that? What's
But
that
I'm
little
just trying to
area?
get a handle.
What's
get a-
this area?
No, we're locked into that number, and I have to find where to put it.
So, you know what, come back. I don't
Yeah,
wanna-
absolutely.
All right.
It's a complicated issue.
Because
I'm happy to sit with
I
Eric
don't
on
see,
it.
it sounds like you're almost building parking that you don't want to build because the,
There's no mechanism to
because-
relieve that pressure, though.
change of circumstances.
God. Okay,
I'll come back.
All right.
Heard our comments, so.
Thank you, Britton.
it's you. You're
All
up
right, we're
next.
going to continue on. 4 more applications this evening. We have Calbacker's Auto Storage Building.
Powering through.
Okay, the applicants redesigned the parking layout based upon the comments at the previous meeting. Unfortunately, the spaces, which, this one got cut off too, great. These, you can kind of see it on here. The spaces that they drew in the middle here don't meet the town code requirement. They're too narrow, so It looks like they can reconfigure that in a way that meets the town code with the lanes and the spaces there, but that'll need to be done. The applicant submitted a narrative, as the board had requested, about the use of the basement area of the new building. It sounds, based on what they're saying, that they're operating it as a storage garage. They said that they're charging people for storing automobiles there for an extended period of time that aren't necessarily the ones that they're repairing with the repair garage use. That is a prohibited use in the NB zone. I see two recourses right now. Three. One would be to remove the storage garage operation from the property. The other would be to contact the chief building inspector, see if this is something that historically has occurred. I mean, this is a new building, a new basement area is what they're asking for. So I don't know that that would be the case, but they could contact Tom Priato and see if there's something that we don't know about. The other would be a code change. Obviously, it's something you would have, that would be vetted in front of the town board. They would decide it. I mean, my immediate inclination is that it's by its own definition a very passive use. I don't see why a repair garage is allowed where you have, impact wrenches and things like that going, and you wouldn't allow someone to store a car in a basement for 5 months. But that's something that the applicants could pursue, or would have to at the very least right now, because it is a prohibited use as the code says right now. So the applicant submitted information about lighting. We find it acceptable. You should determine if you agree. The applicant submitted a site landscaping plan, which is illustrated on here. You can't see it though, unfortunately. You should determine if that's acceptable. They're proposing 32 new arborvitae to augment the original site landscaping plan with the original site plan approval. We find that acceptable. That seems to be very substantial, actually. The town engineer's comments I'll save for the end. The Office of Fire Prevention said the building needs to be have sprinklers and ventilation, this being the basement storage area. Tom Priato's memo is from September 3rd. He says that the detail on Washington Avenue, he has multiple points here. I won't go in too much in depth. He finds the engineering elements unsatisfactory. He has 6 points. He points out that the Washington Avenue access, the new access that they're requesting, that detail needs to be changed. He mirrors my comment that the spaces 1 through 17 don't meet the town code requirement. He says groundwater protection policy does appear to be noted satisfactory, but he wants some more specs. He says drainage calculations are satisfactory. I requested additional information on the type and configuration of the trench drain. He says oil heat tanks are shown on the side of one of the buildings. The applicant should provide the planning board all outdoor containers of heating oil, diesel fuel, gasoline, and lubricating oils, their volumes and locations, and the required Suffolk County Health Services Article 12 permits. That's hazardous substances with the county if they're storing hazardous substances on site. In certain volumes, they need an approval from the county health department. I'm not sure whether or not they do, because there's no information submitted on that. And then he makes a comment about he's not sure who submitted which plan. So he finds the engineering elements unsatisfactory. And jumping back to my memo, we find the application incomplete pending the resolution of those issues. And you should discuss really the main things are redoing the parking area, and then whether or not a storage garage use is present and how that's going to be handled, considering it's prohibited in the zoning district. So.
Thank you, Mr. Shantz. Is the agent here this evening? Yes. Okay.
It's Lori Wiltshire for Land Planning Services, representing the Cowbackers. I want to, well, most of this is housekeeping, and I will have the site plan designer fix the parking and the entrances, as Tom Talmadge pointed out. And then I guess it was written in this memo, the main issue is the use of the storage garage. And really, I mean, I'm going to go see Tom Priato myself tomorrow to speak about this, but I'm not sure if you're going to be sending a letter to them, or it's up to the board.
We'll decide that, yeah.
You'll decide that, okay.
Yeah.
And then whether or not to pursue the issue with the town board, I guess, would be after we determine what to do with Tom Priato. And I think that's it. We'll note the sprinklers on the building plans that Tom Talmadge has asked for.
Thank you, Laura.
Yep.
I'll go right to Joe Potter on this.
You know, I think we had a similar situation across the street where there's a storage use, and clearly there's demand for vehicle storage in the winter. These are mostly expensive, beautiful cars. And, you know, at a guess, it may be that this is not allowed in neighborhood business, maybe because planners of the town board at one point thought that storage garages don't provide jobs, that they're very passive kind of a use, and maybe, I'm just speculating, there was a thought in neighborhood business that there should be businesses there which would function in a different way. But given that this is something that there's a need for, I think it would be worth the planning board considering writing to the town board and asking the town board to take a look at this issue. It is functioning as a storage garage now. Both floors of that building, the above floor and the basement, are storing cars at this time. If, you know, and I don't know about it being ancillary to a repair garage, the property, which is much smaller across Washington Avenue, really could function simply as a storage garage, and I think it probably is. So that would be the, short of changing the code, I don't know how you'd legalize what they're doing with storage. That's really a question, you know.
Let me, in a second, I'll get my memo that has the aerial. That'll be a better visual here. But another thing, too, to mention is that, you know, I think it might be appropriate to allow storage garage uses in the NB zoning district. I don't know why those two are contrary to each other. But, you know, if we do get down to the point where, you know, it's allowed in the zoning district and it's a special permit or permitted, you know, you do want to consider ultimately whether or not it's okay on this property, you know, because you do also have the repair garage use here. There have been comments in the past about the number of cars that are on here and the amount of storage and things on other properties. So I'm not saying necessarily that I don't think that it should get that approval, but just keep in mind that distinction between, you know, I don't see why storage garage is prohibited in NB, but I don't know necessarily that I think that it should automatically be approved on this property, and you'd need to determine that it is appropriate with the other use during the course of review.
That's a good point. It's let me just, yeah, one sec, Clark. It's just, what we're dealing with is that it's there now.
Yeah, well.
And I don't know what the history was, we don't have to go into that tonight, but looking at these diagonal parking places, that area now, I mean, you can see in the aerial, and there are actually a lot more cars there than are showing in the aerial. They're not, they're stacked, they're, you know, they're in lines, they're as tight as they can be. So is the expectation that the only parking that would be allowed on that site would be if the cars are in the designated parking stalls?
Can I address something
Yeah,
first?
yeah.
Because this is really quite interesting, actually. Sure. The concept of, I mean, you have to remember, that this is a modification request. The previous approval was actually called Cal Backer's Auto Storage Site Plan. And what we did is we got approval to build this big building to store autos in. So at some point along
Let's
the
call a
way.
spade a spade, Laurie. You got approvals for the building, but not the basement.
Not the basement.
Let's
The
call-
basement is
You never
illegal.
would have gotten approvals in a million years
For a
a
basement.
12,000 square foot building in a neighborhood business.
Illegally built.
Neighborhood business zone. Never, never. They built it illegally. You can roll your eyes. They
I'm
built
not
it
rolling my
illegally.
eyes. I'm
And-
actually.
And you know all this, and this has been going on since 2005, and this is gonna go away till next year when they go into court again. And this is my argument with our process from day one with this. I want this legal and done and over. I want to see a vote, but this is gonna keep going on and on and on here.
Okay, that's totally not what I was talking about. First of all, I thought
It was built without.
I do understand, that's why I'm here. I'm here to modify the approval to get a permission to do what they got permission for above, below. Do you understand that this was already approved as auto storage? We're only asking to allow it in the basement as well. So somewhere along the line, the issue of whether this was ancillary to the repair garage has already been dealt with. This is not really going back to Tom Priato, because the planning board approved auto storage on this site in Their
Is that
original.
in name only, or is that the use that was proposed
That was
as
the
well?
use and the name for the original approval. I'm only here to ask for the same use that was approved in the past for the basement.
So,
I will
Laura,
say on the resolution of approval, the application was called auto storage.
Yes.
It was submitted in the site plan and the review that they were going to be storing automobiles in the upper part of the building. However, in the nature of approved use, the approved use was a repair garage. It did not specifically.
Which
say
changes
storage.
it quite a bit.
Yeah, of course.
So,
I mean, the name is different than the approved
You
use.
could make an argument that, one way or the other, but I'm just saying, I remember this, because when this came up, I looked at the resolution of approval to see whether or not they were approved for a storage garage use as well. That wasn't listed verbatim, but it was mentioned during the course of the review that they'd be storing automobiles in the upper portion of that building.
Right, but the repair garage was the back-end addition to the main repair garage building.
Yes.
So this was always intended as auto storage and
It was
approved
stated
as
that
auto
they would be
storage.
storing cars in here.
Correct. So I'm going to go see Tom Priato about this tomorrow because frankly, the use has been approved for the site and all I'm asking for is additional storage in the
so
basement.
just,
And by the way, my clients do repair their clients' cars who are stored in this building. They're their customers who use their fancy hot rod cars all summer and come in and get the repairs done and then stick it in the
Some.
basement for the winter.
some of them.
I would
mean,
say,
I was there today with Rob. Some of them are. Some of them are pure storage.
okay.
But it sounds like the planning board approved storage in the upstairs in violation of the town code.
Well, no, it might have been determined to be an accessory use to a repair garage by the building inspector. That's why I'm going to go see Tom Priato
You
tomorrow.
could probably go around in circles like on this for hours. There's also a distinction of, are you storing cars that are being repaired as
I
part
think
of-
that's
Okay,
what
so
it
let's
was.
take that off the table, Eric. Let's take that off the table, because what's being done is, what's being asked for is pure storage as well as what, so, I'm just,
Well, she's asking for, are you asking at this point for
For
auto
addition-
storage as a second principal use?
No, we're not. All right,
So
so the
you're
previous
trying
site
to-
plan approval approved the auto storage, okay? The storage garage use of this building, not the basement. The basement was built, and then they started using it in this capacity. So we're here to modify the approval.
So they approved the upstairs,
Yep.
and was that accessory to the?
It had to have been determined to be accessory.
Okay, so now you're asking to make it twice as large, and the question is, are you making it into a more principal use as auto storage, which is not permitted in the
When was the
zone?
first approval?
2005?
so what, I'm just trying, not to drag this out in a long night, but I'm trying to really understand what this is. It is legal within the code to have storage as an accessory use to a repair
That would
garage?
have to have been the
Question.
building inspector determination. I don't know the answer to that.
I'm going to go see him tomorrow.
All right.
Because,
So
this
I
is
think
all.
until we establish whether or not what you're asking for is legal, we can't really,
No.
That's
can't
right.
make a
you
decision.
know. But then the other question is just how do you build a basement like that without somebody stopping you along the way and
happened
saying
more
this
than once in
basement's
this
not
town.
in the,
I've
in
been
the
here
plans.
before on quite a few of these.
I can name the other two, Art.
And I also have to tell you that in one instance, they were given a building permit for it, even though the planning board approval didn't include the basement.
And
So-
there you go.
Our code was changed.
Good
and you have to-
times.
From these, that every agency has to have the same set of stamp plans now, because they would, anyway, it's changed, it's not gonna happen anymore.
That's reassuring.
So Job, did you have any?
So I'm sorry to drag this out, but, so Lori, would you get back to the planning board
I will,
and we'll try to determine whether we can even approve what you're asking for?
absolutely. And just to answer your question, this original approval was 2002, 6,000 square foot auto storage building on site of existing auto repair station and proposed addition to existing shop. That was the site plan special permit original approval.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Job, are you done?
Yeah.
Okay, how about you, Pat?
Yeah, I really want this legalized and over and CO'd. And I hope we can work towards that now. I don't find it offensive what they're doing there with storing cars. And when you look at what a repair garage is, they all store cars. And, whether it's a short term, they're waiting for parts which come from, wherever they come in, it takes a month and cars are sitting there. They all do this. So I'm not opposed to it. as far as working through, and I think there's gonna be a way around it, Laura, you're gonna be able to work this out and find it where it's gonna be acceptable for storage on here. But what my concerns have been over the years in this site is that there's double the use of what's there now, and what was approved, and they still use 100% of the site. And I just wanted it tightened up and cleaned up, and you can't use 100% of any site. And that's been my argument from day one, it's just clean this up, use 80% of whatever you're allowed to use, and keep the rest, the landscaping clean. Not that it is a neat, well-kept site, and they do a nice job with that there, but it could be even a little bit tighter. So Lori, I think you can find your way if you follow through and work around this code thing, and we'll be able to go forward with this. Because, I mean, every other use in our town is CI, service commercial, there's 2 uses, so I think you'll be able to find your way around it. If not, then you're gonna have to go to the town board and deal with this. And lastly, I do agree with all of Tom's comments, with the engineering comments and the basement ventilation. Some things that had to be worked out. The other sprinkler, right? It has to be worked out.
Okay. Who are you, Diana Weir?
Okay. I have no problem with storing cars in the garage basement. It's full of cars. There are cars there, whether he's repairing them and waiting to fix them, or if they want to store them over the winter. I don't have a problem with that. I agree with the comments from the engineer, because you do want it to be safe. And you'll just have to iron out whatever the issues are, but it seems like they're storing cars there already. So storing them in the basement, I have no problem with that, as long as it's safe, the health and safety issues are complied with.
Okay, Ian.
Yeah, the garage is obviously an issue here, and I thought a lot about this. Why would a benign use not be permitted in neighborhood business as opposed to repair garage, which is more intensive? And I think the answer might be is that the garage serves the neighborhood, whereas the storage might not. These cars might be coming from neighborhoods outside of this neighborhood, which might not have been the intent of neighborhood business district in general. I'm not saying I'm against it. I'm against that code recommendation, but I do think we got to think through it pretty carefully before we make that recommendation, instead of just trying to figure out the answer for one case. As far as the applicant's argument in terms of this is already approved as storage, well, all repair shops have storage for the cars that they're working on. So just because it's in the title doesn't mean that that use was approved. And I think that the planning department has indicated that use wasn't approved. So if you say you wanted to store the cars in the garage that you're working on so that you don't store them outside, great. I don't think anybody's gonna have an issue. Well, there still may be an issue about how that basement came to be built and the size and things like that. But whether we recommend that code change and the town board decides to allow a storage garage in this district, it might not be appropriate for this site, because there's a lot of cars there. A lot of cars that I don't think can fit in the outdoor storage area in the corner here, and then the workers or the parking spaces to be used by cars of people who are, coming and going. I'm also concerned about, the access onto Washington Ave, allowing cars to spill out that way where they can be parked. So I'm not saying that I'm against the cars being stored there, but if you fill up that garage with outside vehicles that have nothing to do with the repair shop, and therefore the cars that are being repaired are flooding the site and it can't contain them, I think that's a problem. Maybe that's not fully the case, but I think we have to examine this pretty closely instead of just saying, oh, it's got cars, we can put more cars in the basement. I think it's a little more complicated than that in terms of the overall intensity of this use. So, that being said, I think it's worth talking more on our board about whether we'd want to recommend that change, and obviously the town board's gonna have to look into it. In the meantime, I think the building inspector should weigh in on this. But again, I don't think we should dumb this down so much as say, oh, it was approved before, and so obviously it's okay, because, again, storing cars that are being worked on is a very different thing than a distinct business, even if they're customers sometimes. It's a different thing than storing cars as a business in and of itself. So whether that's appropriate generally in a neighborhood business is something we should decide what we want to recommend, and whether it be appropriate should the town board make that change for this site is a totally other thing. In the meantime, you got to get the parking dimensions correct, so that they fit, and then we'll discuss whether it's actually adequate for the particular site.
Okay. Nancy Keeshan?
Okay. Should the parking layout be amended? Absolutely. Should we contact the chief building inspector? Absolutely. I'm not I don't think we should be sending comments anywhere until we just see what the determination is made, and so I have no further comments at this point.
Yeah, I totally agree with Nancy on this. It's pure speculation on why a storage garage is prohibited in the neighborhood business zoning district. I don't know why, but it's the town code, and I'm sure there's a reason for it. I think we're at a point now where we really need to reach out to the chief building inspector, determine whether or not the storage automobiles in the basement is indeed representative of storage garage use or an ancillary function of a repair garage use. So I think that's something I need to have before we get into some of these other questions. And it sounds like you got an appointment with the chief building inspector tomorrow, and I'm sure he'll be sending us some comments. All right. Okay. Well, thank you, and thank you for your patience. I know it's been a long night.
On that one, do you find the lighting and landscaping acceptable, or do you want to wait?
Oh, wait. Yeah.
Joe, are you okay waiting on that, right?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, okay.
Just picking up on what Pat said, is there a percentage of a site in neighborhood business that you're allowed to use? Is there a rule that
Well, I
says you
just
can't use 100%?
coverage calculation. Yeah, it's,
So is that, we should know what those numbers are then?
yeah, I think they're on there, and I think it complies.
complies.
Yeah. I think they were actually over it to begin with, and then in the original site plan, they were reducing it slightly by bringing in some of the parking areas. This modification is just the basement area, so they're not actually adding anything new beyond what their previous site plan approval was in terms of total lot coverage.
You can say it's modification, but it was never C of O, the original one.
Well, but exactly, they got the approval, they haven't if you see a vote it, then they would be doing a new site plan, you know? Yes.
We did address this in our last round of this in 2013. We did send a request to Tom Priato about the total lot coverage. And basically, he concurred that I agree that currently approximately 88% of the lot is covered, whereby only 70 is permitted in the NB zone. With regard to the existing lot coverage, your calculations based on the CO for this property appear to be accurate. You are correct that no actual lot coverage calculations are noted, however, they can be attained. I agree that currently approximately 86% of the lot is covered, whereby only 70% is permitted in the NB zone. Consider this coverage as legally pre-existing non-conforming, but it is the opinion of this office that it is allowed based on the certificate of occupancy that is on record in this office.
For that building? Is it
Existing
C of O?
coverage, total lot coverage on the lot is 88%, where 70% is allowed, but it was CO'd. So it's his opinion that it is allowed based on the certificate of occupancy that is on record in our office. That is in your file, that memo.
Yep.
So that issue of the overuse of the thing, I think, is no longer an issue. It's just a matter of this use issue, I think.
Well, it could be mitigation with getting approval for the basement.
Yeah, exactly. There's a separate use now being proposed.
But that doesn't affect total lot coverage.
Well, it does if
I
it means
disagree
that,
with you there.
it does if it means it's going to be more intensive, so.
No, total lot coverage is the percentage of disturbed areas on the site that are improved with asphalt roofs.
No, I get it.
Oh, okay.
I'm just saying, then you're asking for more, so that's been C of O'd, maybe an error, and now there's another use in the basement for something that wasn't improved, that's gonna further intensify the
Let
site.
me meet with Tom on this, because I think
Yeah.
it was approved. It's just that we're asking to do it on both levels.
It may have been CO'd in the past, but now you're asking to intensify the use on the site, and it may be appropriate at this time to look at reducing some of that. That's
Because of the pre-existing non-conforming.
because of the
change that
proposed
back.
intensification.
Or not even taking away coverage, but not, contributing to the intensification of the site in another
Right.
way.
I think everyone should look at the landscaping plan really closely, too, because they've done a really good job of buffering the site from view from all roads. Please.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to continue our site plan reviews, and this one is Ms. Ryan. She's going to give us an overview of personalized pool storage shed. Excuse me. That's right.
Oh, this is a commercial site in the commercial industrial zoning district. Currently, the site is permitted 2 commercial uses, and they're applying for a special permit to allow 4 service commercial uses on the site. Right now, there are 2 buildings, a large commercial building and a smaller storage building. They're proposing to have a 3rd building to use as storage. I'm going to skip right to the conclusion. The site appears to need an additional indoor storage area for the pool chemicals and fertilizer material. Plus, they need an outdoor storage area for the piping, stones, etc., in addition to the existing landscaping outdoor storage area. A new storage building may provide indoor storage space needed to store the pool equipment. However, it appears the building, as proposed at 740 square feet, has too large a footprint for the northerly corner of the lot, as it displaces space needed for parking and outdoor storage. It also requires additional parking spaces which interfere with the turning radius on entering the rear parking area. The parking layout as proposed for the 740 square foot building does not work well for circulation. Spaces numbered 7 to 11 block at least 4 of the overhang doors and create a safety hazard. The number of spaces required for the 740 square foot building is 31, whereas the number of spaces required for the smaller 524 square foot building is 29 spaces. One of the special permit requirements that the board will need to determine that the project meets is that this site is sufficient for the proposed use. The planning department suggests the applicant consider proposing to construct the smaller 524 square foot building that they initially proposed. This would enable the site to have indoor space for the pool chemicals and equipment, and due to a reduced parking requirement, there would be space to designate as outdoor storage space for the piping, the patio stones, and space for the dumpster. By making all of the spaces 90 degrees and by relocating the group of spaces blocking the overhang doors, the circulation and safety issue would improve. In conclusion, the application is incomplete pending the issues raised above. The engineer's memo states that the Smith plan, as it pertains to the groundwater protection plan, needs a slight change. The containment area calculations need to be adjusted to provide for 1,000 gallons. And there is a 2-storied frame building on the subject property, which has been discussed previously in reference to obtaining access to the back parking lot. The site plan shows a dimension of 20 feet between the roof overhang and the corner of the parking space number 13. I do not find this to be acceptable because I find it difficult to understand how vehicles can make a hard left and immediately a hard right turn in the area shown. Therefore, I request additional information and analysis of how trucks and other vehicles can maneuver this corner. Also, the site plan shows the 2 handicap spaces to be satisfactory. However, it will require a van accessible handicap sign.
Thank you. Is the agent here?
Good evening, Chairman, members of the board. David Kirst from Egan and Matthews on behalf of the applicant, Greg Gordon, who's also here with me, and may be addressing some possible questions that come up for him. I'd like to start off in regards to the footprint of the building. We're well under coverage, total coverage. So that space is, if you, in the memo, it's noted that there is equipment being stored outside that this space is needed for inside to store. There's also security issues where some of the stuff has walked off site without approval. It's been It's occurred more than once. It's been referred to the police, but until it's stored securely, it's going to continue to be an issue, and that's what is attempting to be addressed here with the space being requested for indoor storage. There is outdoor storage area proposed, which I believe can be expanded as well further along the side of the building where it is. That would alleviate some of the planning department's concerns. But it seems that a majority of the concern is over parking and the ingress into the rear of the property. The prior applications, the dumpster was located too close to the frame building's overhang, that secondary storage building. The 20-foot minimum is, the 20-foot is the minimum in the code, is their recommended standard, and that's what we've complied with. So I'm not an engineer, so I'd have to speak with somebody who might be able to shed more light, but if it says a 20-foot aisle is required and we provide a 20-foot aisle, I just find it hard to say, they asked us for 20 feet, we provided 20 feet, now they're saying, 20 foot's not good enough, can you give us more? I think you're making a left turn into the back with a 20-foot wide aisle. Again, I'll have to speak with maybe the surveyor or maybe an engineer to see what exactly that might not be satisfactory to the town engineer. In regards to additional parking spaces, we believe that if necessary, along the Learned Hand Court side of the property, we have sufficient area between the existing sidewalk and the property line to provide either perpendicular, spots that are perpendicular to Learned Hands Court or angled to provide additional parking. So I'll have to speak with our surveyor, try and lay that out so as to provide additional parking in the front and maybe eliminate a spot or two in the rear and provide some possible additional outdoor storage. But there is, between the concrete sidewalk and the property line, there is, I believe, it's just over 18 feet, which I believe the minimum length for a parking space can be 18 if it's 10 foot wide. So we could provide additional spaces along the front. However, it's in an area that's landscaped and is attractive. So the area where all the parking is now is cleared, it's used, and it complies with the minimum required distance. One of the other mentions in the memo is spaces 7 through 11 to be moved away from the two-story frame building and the main building. I believe that there is some room to do that, which would provide greater than the 3 feet that's currently between space 7 and the main building. But it would provide, there's no requirement that with an overhead door, you have to be able to back a truck up to it. It makes access for people with rolls of hose, with small pieces of equipment to go in and out without having to be able to back up to it. And it's functionally, this isn't a car garage or automobile storage, so there's no need to get a vehicle into one of those bays.
Can I ask a question about the commercial uses going on there?
Yes, that was my
Yeah.
next.
Okay, well, I'll let you tackle.
There is a sign, I believe, for Jack Delaschmidt. He is a partner with, let me put his name, Jeff Zimmer, who is East End Gardens. They do design, installation, and maintenance of landscaping. So that's why we feel that as a design, installation, and maintenance, that it's a landscaper. I'm sure most landscapers nowadays, or at least the larger ones in our area, have design staff on hand, and that's the situation that's in existence here as well. I believe that really should do it.
Wonderful. We'll call you up if we have questions, or if you want to hang out. Maybe
Yeah.
Pat's going to take this one first. This is Bob What's that?
That's okay.
Did you want to take it
No,
first?
no.
Oh,
Thought I was, no, so you know better than I do. No, really, go right ahead.
All right. Thank you. You know, I understand that it's under the allowable coverage, but there's a lot going on the site. I don't know. I pulled in today and looked at it, and you know, legally, the applicant, you know, could be entitled to this. I question what's going on here and the functionality of the site. You know, looking at the site plan, you know, you have bay doors. You have 4 bay doors right here. You have 2 bay doors here. This is blocked with this. You know, with the creation of this building and eliminating these spaces. You know, this is a busy site with a lot going on here, and I understand the applicant, you know, he's entitled to 4 uses. These are double bays, so this building's split in half, even though there's 2 doors on each side. And it's, I guess, 1 use for this structure. So he's entitled to 1 more, but I want to hear from the rest of the board, because this is a busy site. And I don't know how this is going to function and flow with the elimination of spaces and this 1 more building here.
Is that true that it was brought to my attention too that perhaps a lot of employees for these businesses are parking out on Learn Hands Court as well? Is that
I was just going to ask to say something actually. From speaking with my client and general knowledge, the parking that's on the street isn't from this site. Triar, there's 2 other commercial buildings, I believe Delfino Installation and Triar, I don't know if they, landscape management or something, company, that uses the road. And
so it's the other guys?
Yeah, I know you probably hear, I know that's maybe the answer you were expecting, but that is the answer. You know, our site parking is contained on site, and would continue to be.
Okay.
Like I said, also, if needed, I feel there would be some additional space available along the front of the building.
Okay. Pat, do you have any additional input?
No,
or
not at this time. I want to hear from the rest of the
How
board.
are you, Diana Weir?
Stephen Hinspeth, go under the bridge. Yeah, and there's a commercial site. Yeah, it's the first one on the left.
Diana, did you have any?
Okay. I think that whole little street or court is all commercial. That's a little commercial strip.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's 4 different businesses there. So where would they be parking? Where people are parking that they shouldn't be?
Here,
I don't know.
the street.
There it is. There's the elevation.
Right.
I mean, the aerial, sorry.
Okay.
So that, the one, we're looking at the one on top.
The one yeah, to the north.
Right, and this is where people are parked.
Right here.
Sir.
This is right here.
Right.
Every morning at 7 o'clock, the cars are double parked here on Triar's side. You can't get down there. All of my
Now, was that coming in off Stephen Hans?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the industrial complex going in off
All of
Stephen
my
Hans. Okay,
parking,
got
all
it.
of our parking is on site. I can understand what you're saying, what your concern was about, you felt there was a lot going on the site. We have parking here for our employees. We have parking, how do we make this small?
Sorry. Every time you touch it, it'll zoom in like that.
Okay, just make it smaller.
Eric, you might want to jump in there and bail them out.
As good as I can.
I know you could do better than this.
On the top, there's a magnifying,
That's an interesting spot there.
there it is, up there. That's it. I think that's it, no?
When I say busy site, I mean his site, not the
I know.
whole.
I know what you
find it
mean.
easiest to use the mouse, and there's a non-wireless mouse.
Smaller. That's it. I will not touch it. This is my building here. As you can see, we have part, oh.
Couldn't stop touching it, huh?
Oh, wow.
That's really big.
I think I'm gonna take some responsibility as the operator.
I'm
Give
sorry.
a little plus.
I won't touch this again.
Yeah, you gotta click it a couple times.
Oh, we're not eating it now.
Can we go without the visual?
Yeah, we don't need the
It's getting
visual.
really
Let's
late
just
here.
talk it through, yeah.
Survey of the property on
Yep.
We've got it right here.
Come on.
Have it right here.
Site plan.
that I understand.
We have it right here.
Yeah, let's
Have
talk it
right
out.
here.
This is the Riverhead Court. If
Okay.
you saw, if you take a look at that, if you call up that
Okay.
aerial again, what you'll see is that we have parking here.
Okay.
We have parking here, we have parking here, and we also have parking here. Now, in that, 20 years ago, when there wasn't any construction on there, because in that memo it says in 1994, is it 94? We used to park here, and then what happens, we got some complaints, so then we started saying, well, we'll just clean up some of our site up here, and we created parking wherever we needed. We're the only, myself and Pat Trunz are the only people right now that do not use up Learned Hand Court for parking and loading and unloading. Every morning, there are cars parked along here, and sometimes there are cars parked, double parked on Triarch. We have 4 sites on here. We have 2 landscapers, myself, and the steel guy. The steel guy brings in some of his stuff every once in a while out to work on it here. This building, the purpose of this building is, to, number one, we, I believe, are one of the few, or one of the only companies, pool companies in East Hampton right now that have containment. We put the chlorine in here. Chlorine and acid together will make a chlorine gas. We do not store the chlorine and the acid together. And I do not want to store the chlorine and acid together because I could kill my neighbors. I don't know anybody else that separates the chlorine and the acid and has containment. So what I want to do is I want to put chlorine here, acid here, and chlorine here, because that will make it safe. It's the only thing that's going to make it safe. At the same time, we have had, unfortunately, and you can look at the police records, we've had a couple of issues. And so therefore, what I do is I take the fertilizer here, the acid here, all the stuff that's outside storage here, which I think is not terribly sightly, and put it inside this building. Why do I want a building that size? Because then I can clean up the whole thing, the equipment, the acid, the fertilizer, and I can put it in this building. That's basically it. I mean, it's. What about? If you take a look at our. I will not touch it. Take a look at this. You can see that one car in front of my parking. That one car is right there. We've got parking. We have extra parking here. We do not need extra parking. If any morning you want to come out here and take a look at Triar, their parking is all over the road. We do not park all over the road. There was another issue raised in this memorandum, and that was the fact that they stated that this was a wood floor. The way that floor is constructed, and I understand why they felt it was a wood floor, the way that floor is constructed is we made the containment, and then what I did was I put 2x8s on edge, 12 inches on center, all the way along the building, like that. And on top of that, I laid 2x8 planks, so you could take up any kind of a dolly, any kind of weight that would come in here. But this is not a wood floor. It is a wood floor on top and a concrete containment underneath. That is this.
Plans that are in the file, I believe, do show that.
Okay.
For both the new building and for the existing.
The intention here is to do the same thing, which is to contain whatever has to be contained. Now, the doors. I never even opened that door. I don't think I've opened the left-hand door in the back. I'm not going to even go near that diagram. But if you're looking down from the top, you're looking down in here. And there are 4 garage doors. And those garage doors were basically designed to have easy access in and out. I haven't opened that door for probably 15 years. That door I use. The guy who fabricates steel only uses this one door, so actually we don't even open those doors full. We only open them about 7 or 8 feet high. Why did I put big doors in? Because I wasn't sure at any point, you know, someone might want a big door, and it was a 2-story building, and I had 20 feet, so I made the big doors. I think, you know, what this plan does, is it allows us to put chlorine here, acid here, take the outside storage here, which is just, you know, and instead of just having it kind of scattered on the ground, now we can have some racks in here, we can stack it up, everything can be inside.
Why 2 stories?
Yeah, what about the second floor?
Pardon?
Why the second floor?
Because you can put pipe and stuff like that on the second floor. Right in this building right now, I've got filters and pumps on the second floor. And I don't really have enough space for all my pipe, that's why I pipe back here. I have, on the first floor, we have heaters, stuff like that. And other things that we store.
But don't you have an office on the second floor of the existing storage building?
You know, I don't know what that was ever designed to be. I do know that from the very beginning, we had a toilet and a sink there, and
Is that approved with the health department?
we have a CO on it. In other words, this building has not been changed since the original CO. So we didn't put a bathroom in here. That bathroom is there from the initial construction. And,
The only
you know,
thing
that
is,
was under
you
the Christopher
really
Farrell.
can't put these doors in front of the bay doors.
Well,
Because
you know,
this is you now, but
We could put parking here. And actually, I mean, you know, I think one of the reasons I would only object to parking here is I landscaped this. So it
Got
looks
it.
really nice.
No,
I think it looks nice.
Okay.
When I designed this building, I said to myself, I want to drive up to a building every morning that makes me feel, I'm glad I came to work here instead of this is a shithole that I wish to Christ I didn't have to work in.
I know.
And candidly, I think that, I think, for whatever reason it is, the model for this building, for the commercial building, it's a commercial building, and this is a very different model, was actually the buildings in Watermill. If you go through Watermill, you see those nice brick buildings. I like them. Maybe you don't like them, but I like them. And I thought to myself, commercial buildings can look nice. Commercial buildings can work. And if you look at this building, it's got skylights. Even in the storage spaces, I put in skylights so I didn't have to turn on the lights all the time. So I've got skylights in the roof. If you ever come up and you go to the second floor, you'll see skylights in the roof. Natural lighting, so the lights, they don't turn on the lights all the time. You've got windows, so that you can, so it looks like it's something nice. And we planted some plants here. Well, I can take the plants out and put my parking spots in here, but I'd prefer not to. But, right now I've got a space here, I can stick a couple of parking spots here, get rid of that one there. We don't, for whatever reason, we don't really have a problem with people coming in here and unloading and loading their trucks. It just has not been a problem.
Can I see that?
Yeah, certainly. I like paper, by the way.
It's not just you,
Computers are really never me.
It's not just you, it's the
screen.
screen.
In the 60s, you know what I'm trying to say? This
Okay,
is tough for me.
it looked a little wrinkly, but I thought it was.
I'm sorry.
If I may, in Maureen's, in the planning memo, it does mention to narrow the 40-foot gap that's between these two sections of parking to 24 as would be the minimum, design standard, which if we shift these spots closer, that allows us to also move them further away from the frame building.
bay, though. And how does
You got bay
But you could buy yourself
bay
a lot of
doors
space.
that you
Yeah,
can-
I think we could buy at least another few.
Or how does an emergency truck, anything get in there if they're all the cars are
Because
parked?
that's the way you're using it now, but you sell this building, and then you're gonna have parking spaces in front of
I think,
bays
you know,
where
I
trucks
think,
may
you know,
wanna go or
well, let me
something.
put it this way, I think, you know, it's interesting, you build it, you design a building, you build it, and then, you know, what it's designed to do and how parking is designed to work is the way it was laid out. But what happens is, it's more about enforcement. We have nobody parking on the road. They've got 10
Right,
cars
you've
parked
got a
on the
lot of
road.
parking. No,
And there's no,
we
par-
see that.
and, you
Right,
know,
right, right.
and, you know, no one seems to care, you know? No one seems to care. I mean, you know, I don't quite understand that. I mean, I would think that, you know, I can get approvals for whatever I get, and if I decide and to disregard what has been the intention of this, to get, you know, to rent parking spots. You're not gonna know whether it's employee parking lot or I'm renting parking spots overnight. And then, you know, suddenly the whole place is full, when you know, people pull in, they don't have any place to park, so they'll park on the road. I think enforcement is what's important here, which is to say, if this allows me to have security, I'm well within the lot coverage. I'm not sure what my coverage is, but I think I'm, you know,
You
I'm
are.
like
You are.
way, way down.
Even
on
with
the-
this
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
proposed structure, you're under.
Way, way down.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that, though. I don't have a problem. I
I-
have
you
a
know-
problem with those little spaces in front of the bay doors.
Well, I mean, you know,
Yeah, no,
you know,
I'm just.
and I understand that, and I think, and actually,
all.
you know, we could say, well, fine, let's eliminate this and let's put parking spots here. But you've eliminated a nice tree here, you've got a beautiful, Japanese maple here, you've got some rhododendrons, you've got some Hetzi juniper here. Pardon?
Do we, I don't believe so. It's based on that
According
one
to
per
the
500.
usage?
According to the calculation, yes. Well, the board
No,
has,
the
for
town
storage,
calculation, they need, how many,
there is no, according to the calculation by the surveyor, which was based on prior calculations on this site, it's 1 for 500 square feet of storage,
That's why they're-
1 for 180 of office.
So you need 'em.
So that's why they're there. But
Okay.
so you need them on the site.
And by looking at the, you know, the aerial, you can see that we have,
You're not full, yeah, we
we're
get
not
it.
full.
So let's go around the board here, guys, and get some additional comments, and then if we need some additional questions, we'll call you back.
Well, I built it to look good, I built it to be safe, and you know, one of the things that happened, as a matter of fact, is when we built this building, it was not required by code that you have fire protection. We spent when I say we, Pat Trunzo, and, you know, we all actually paid a certain percentage, and it cost me about $10,000 to provide fire protection. I didn't object because that was a safety thing. And, you know, Trunzo paid his, Steve Mahoney, who is at this time over here, he paid his, and I've forgotten who paid that because I'm not even sure who owned it.
Okay.
But that's where Gary Grant used to be, Grant
Thank
Heating
you.
and Air Conditioning.
He's on
Grant.
114.
No, he's
Oh, he's in another place, oh,
Yeah.
I'm all confused.
Okay, we'll,
So Diana,
we'll
did you have
we'll
some
make our
additional?
comments.
No, I have no problem with the building, and I think it's the separation of the chemical components and stuff that make it safe. I have no problem having
I
that
can
tucked
only
back in there.
tell you, if I took a gallon of acid and chlorine and put it on this desk, no one would get out of this room.
Right, no, I have no problem with the building.
That's what they used in World War II when they wanted to kill everybody. And that's
Okay,
what they
well, don't kill
outlawed.
us, okay? Because
No, I
I'll approve the
understand.
darn thing, all
That's-
right? Don't be bringing any chemicals here now.
But I mean, that's how lethal it is, and
Yes, yes, no, I
unfortunately,
understand.
all around town, people are storing this stuff, and there's no containment, and there's no separation.
Right. This building tucked up in there, I don't have a problem with that.
By the way,
If you-
when this building gets up in here, what's gonna happen is all this stuff that's on the ground here will go up on racks, and there'll be,
Right, it'll be cleared up. I see the storage you have outside, because you need it. I don't have a problem. And it's big enough so you'll have the second floor to put, or the second area. But I just have a problem with maybe just these two. I don't know, I just find it
maybe we
weird.
can slide this over here, and we can eliminate this one, and then this will happen, and will come back down.
Okay. Thank you. We'll call you up if we have some additional questions.
That
Okay.
was my
All right.
comment so far.
How about you, Ian?
I agree with Pat. I think there's a lot going on here. It's a pretty busy spot. And some of this plan, even if it meets certain dimensions, I think it's pretty tough to navigate. As far as the bay doors being blocked, I mean, I hate to say, well, you put a bay door now, and even if you don't use it, I mean, theoretically, you could put a wall there, and then these parking spaces become okay. I don't know, you know your building, you know how you use it, and so, you know, I guess I could maybe live with that. I'm a little bit worried about that wheel stop sort of jutting out in the middle of the lot there, because when a car is not parked there, it could be a hazard, and just negotiating this turn here seems a little bit awkward. The suggestion of moving these spaces out towards the center and lessening the space, while I think it alleviates the concern of the doors being blocked, I think it might cause turnaround issues for larger vehicles, which you might use that area for now, I don't know. But it's sort of nice to have an open space where you could, there's probably larger vehicles in and out sometimes. My big concern is, my understanding of this old storage building is there's a second floor that later became an office. I believe it's the planning department's understanding that it wasn't approved as an office, and there wasn't much known about that bathroom. You're saying that's all CO'd, so that could be.
It was there from the beginning. The building inspector at the time was Christopher, he didn't have a problem with it, I built it. Candidly, I don't know.
Well, if it's all okay, it's okay, so I'm just.
I believe that we will need to make a request to modify that.
Well,
For a change of use as recommended by planning, just to reflect what's actually there.
And then there's a question of the
Because
types
I
of.
don't believe it exactly matches the use.
Well, the bathroom came as a real surprise that it's in a storage area, and it's one thing to convert to office space. And then there's a question of the number of uses and the types of uses and whether they're permitted here, which is gonna take a little bit of working through. This is the first time I've seen this. My concern is, though, if there's one storage building that developed an office on the second floor, and now there's another storage building with a second floor proposed, is that gonna become an office? Or,
I would say that, you know, it was 25 years since I built this, and as I recall, everything was fine with the Christopher. I would only say, certainly specify that there is to be no plumbing in this building. I don't have a problem with that.
right.
If that's the case, then it's very clear. The building inspector is very, is directed not to allow plumbing in the building. I wouldn't have.
Right. Well, I think you might, I don't know if you have health department approval for the plumbing in the other building, but you'll have to figure that out too.
May or may not be slightly different than they are now.
Well, right, I don't see, I don't see a septic system here, which if you have a bathroom, there certainly ought to be an associated septic if it was approved by the health department. So I think there's some issues there. I don't know the whole history here, what's approved, what's not. I'm just saying that there are some flags that are coming up for me here. Some of the overall congestion, I certainly appreciate your containment and groundwater protection and safety. I think that's all very, very good. I also understand why you want to move outdoor storage inside. So what you're telling us, I think, makes sense. It's just an issue of the amount of stuff going on here, the congestion, and then especially the second floors, whether that's opening up, more uses and extra uses that might not be approved. If it all, is kosher and good, I think I'll be okay with it, with some adjustment in terms of the flow and the parking area. I would hate to see you knock out your landscaping to use that, but I do think the overall design needs a little bit of work.
I would not have a problem with the building being very clearly stated on the site plan approval that it is to be built, used only for storage alone. And I think that.
That's a starting point.
Absolutely, and I think that what's important to state here is that, then when it is inspected by, prior to being given a directive, which is to say, there is no latitude here for bathrooms. I wouldn't imagine there'd be any way, because the fact of the matter is, when you get a bathroom, you have to get health department.
Well, which I don't know if there is for the bathroom that exists. That's sort of what I'm saying.
It was all approved, and it was all there at the time of the.
You'll need to show the existing sanitary on the site plan, and a condition of this site plan approval has to be health department approval.
Okay.
So
There
it'll,
would be no health department approval because we would not be changing bathrooms.
pardon?
There would be no health
Well,
department.
if you can show that you have health department approval for the existing sanitary, that's one thing, but if you don't have it, you're gonna have to get it.
Okay.
I think that's what.
Joe Potter? I'd like to go see the site. I haven't been there, but I'm just reading from the cover letter. It sounds like with the new building, there would be 8 offices in total. So I can, unless there's something wrong with the list here. And so it seems like it does seem like a pretty intense use, but, if you're otherwise entitled to the building in terms of coverage and parking and so forth, then it may be okay. Yeah, sure.
There's, for square footage calculations, and based on the plans, it shows 8 rooms that are called office, but they're parts of the same use. So there wouldn't be 8, there's not 8 separate offices, there may be 8 separate rooms, but that's part of, they're off of one access point.
But
Some
they're
of
all,
them.
they're
So
all
they'd
being
be-
used as office space?
Yes, they would be used for the 4 offices for the 4 uses.
Plus four more.
No,
In other words, just adding, from your cover letter, there are 8 offices. I'm just kind of, I want to visit the site and get a sense of what's going on. I wasn't looking at the plan, I was just reading the memo and then
No, I just,
counting,
if these offices share a common access, interconnected, so it's not 8
One
separate
business.
offices. One businesses may have,
2 rooms.
as in the description, one business uses multiple rooms.
Okay.
So,
So it's principally kind of headquarters space for these businesses?
yes.
Okay. And then do they have other sites where they have their trucks and so forth?
I don't know the answer to that question. We have to find out from them.
Right.
But otherwise, the parking that we're showing would provide, parking for their employees.
Job, anything additional?
No.
Okay. How about you, Nancy Keeshan?
Just to wrap it up, you did a great job of answering a lot of questions that I had and going over everything, so that was great. As far as the businesses and what they're using and what they're not using, I'd like to see a narrative. I'd like to see it spelled out so that there's no confusion, so just we know who's using what and where for the future. And if there is anything going to be left outside, a notation on the map of specifically where that's going to be and what coverage there will be, if there's any outdoor storage, what's going to be there on the map, just again to clarify it. And my only, let's see, you answered the question about the architect. You need to change the title on the map. Is it title on storage building to commercial storage building? I guess you said the second floor of the new building was not going to be an office, you're going to store pipes there, so that will need to be spelled out as well, so, or put in as a condition. And my only hangup was to sit down with Tom Talmadge and go over the parking issues, because you clearly you can do this, but when he's happy, then I'm happy.
Yeah, I think that's an important item. You really need to get with the town engineer and iron out some of these items that he brought forward in his memo. Look, for me, it makes sense. Thank you for providing an explanation about the storage shed and the separation of the chemicals. I'm not an expert on these matters, and that certainly seems sensible to me. I had some concern about the busyness of this particular parcel. I thought perhaps there were even more than 4 service commercial uses, but apparently there are only 4. And according to the agent, the architect is really in design and maintenance and some other things that perhaps would indeed make that a commercial, a service commercial business. So. Look, overall, I think you got a little bit more work to do on this application, but you're on the right path. I think that, you said you haven't opened up that door in 15 years. Why do you need it? Maybe you just get rid of the door and then keep the spots there. I understand how you like to keep the front of the building nice and attractive, and I don't know why you'd need to relocate those parking spots. Keep them there and just get rid of the overhang door. I don't know. That would be my thought. But at this time, guys, let's get some consensus on this, and then.
Rita, to listen
Yeah.
to the applicant, I understand his need for this. And the reality is, these are on paper. This is just, it's a reality. I got it now. I get what it is. And this is gonna eliminate all the outdoor storage, and I'd like a notation on there, no outdoor storage other than that proposed
Right.
area. I have a concern about the second story, though. I think it's pushing the envelope, but I'm not opposed to that storage building there.
I do too, and I think that you have answered a lot of questions, but I think we should talk to Tom Priato about this too, because your, explanation of the landscape architect as being part of the service commercial, that all makes sense, but it's really not our determination. And the planning department's interpretation was that's not a permitted use, so, we should get this all out there, refer to both Toms, the engineer and the building inspector, and try to get those questions answered, so the next time this comes before us, we can have better answers for you.
So let's get to the consensus, guys. There are a number of questions. I'll just go one by one. The board should discuss with the applicant whether an architect representing a prohibited use use in the CI zoning district occupies space on the site. Apparently, according to you, that's not really it. I guess he is an architect, but he...
Covered that.
But can we get another opinion on that? Like,
Well,
Tom Priato?
oh no, my neck is bothering me, sorry.
I mean, just because that's not really our,
Is
yeah.
that considered part of the service commercial
Yeah.
use? That
Yep.
is-
I'm fine.
Landscape design. It's landscape design, yeah.
Yeah, if the way that he's described it is still classified as a service commercial use.
Okay. Item number 2, does the board agree that the title on the storage building plan should be changed from commercial building to
Yes.
storage building? Yes, all right, okay. Does the board agree the applicant should request a change of use for the second floor of the existing storage building from storage to office use?
It's not gonna be an office.
It's
though.
not gonna be an office, so that's
unnecessary.
not applicable.
No, it is.
Existing, it's the existing
new
one
one?
you just said.
Oh,
It's
I'm
on the
sorry.
existing?
one that
Oh,
has
then
That's their
yes, sorry.
intention.
Yeah, I'll
My
double
mistake.
check the prior approval and.
So you'll get
if
that
they
straightened out.
change
Okay,
space, then we'll get that.
Okay.
sorry.
Okay, how about the parking layout? Should it be revised to relocate the parking spaces blocking the overhang
You
doors?
can have a sit down with Tom.
Yeah, you're gonna sit down with Tom and discuss that? Does the board agree covenants and restrictions should be submitted agreeing to the indoor storage of pool chemicals?
Yes.
I think we're all in
Yes,
agreement
make
there,
sure
right?
that's in there, even though it'll.
Should an additional outdoor storage area be designated on the map, Pat?
If any. Oh, sorry.
What was that, Rita, I'm sorry?
Should an additional outdoor storage area be designated on the map?
Yeah,
No, he's already
because you might
designated
have
one,
some-
but
Yeah,
I'd
okay.
say no additional outdoor storage, that's it.
I would say if you intend more outdoor storage, you mark it on the map, otherwise you
Yeah,
don't do
that's
it.
it.
Okay, you guys okay with that?
Yes.
Joe, you okay?
Yeah, I mean, if they want to designate outdoor storage and fence it off, somehow,
All right,
it's okay. I'm more concerned about holding the line on the storage, if it's really a storage building, that really is what it's used for.
That's why I was concerned about the second story and the building.
But if you go to the site, there's a lot of storage outdoors.
This is
And
gonna
it
eliminate-
appears that the landscaper has the existing area, and then there's pool storage at the northern part of the lot, and it just seems that it appears that they need outdoor storage. They're gonna come with pipes, they're gonna drop the pipes, they're not gonna carry them all the way into the building. The chemicals are another story, they're gonna bring the chemicals into the building because we have to have covenants and restrictions stating that they're gonna do that.
okay.
Because right now, they've had bags of chemicals, fertilizer, all kinds of chlorine salt, close to each other. They have the acid in plastic bottles in the other corner, and, it's over groundwater protection area. I mean.
But that's an argument for the building.
I mean,
Yeah.
it is, they need more indoor storage.
Okay.
We stated that in the memo. But
Okay.
they also need outdoor storage because they have those long PVC pipes. They're not gonna haul those pipes into a building. I don't care how big the building is. They need outdoor storage. And that it should be designated on the site.
Yes.
Okay, then the final item here is, should the applicant increase the building size and relocate parking spaces to improve circulation and safety? I think you need to get with the town engineer and address that item, all right? Guys, thank you for your patience. I know it's been a long night. I'm sorry you weren't last on the lineup, but near the end there. Thank you. All right, we're going to continue on site plan reviews. Amagansett Dunes Apartment Corporation.
Okay, this is a application to reconfigure the parking area and add and relocate some accessory structures in front of a 63-unit co-op building. Property is roughly 3.5 acres, situated on Bluff Road in Amagansett, and is zoned A5 residence. Just want to get another plan up here, if I can. Oh, this thing is not cooperating tonight, to say the least. There's the existing conditions. So really what I want to show you here is, this is the existing conditions right now. Right now, the parking is partially on their property and partially in the town right-of-way, and cars back out onto Bluff Road. It's a dangerous situation. It's a little tough to see, it's not well-defined, but this line right here is actually the property divide, so these spaces over here are actually in the right-of-way and not on the property. I will now highlight what their proposal is, which in general, we support. It's a good project. They're basically adding a landscaped buffer here to have an exit and an entrance to, prohibit cars from backing out onto the road and to control traffic there. However, as this is...
Question, Eric, is that going to be on the town property then?
It will be partially on
that's
town
what I'm
property,
saying.
yeah.
So if they want to buffer that out,
They're going to need
the
other
space is
approvals.
in, so
Yeah.
we need some kind of easement language or something.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I'll get to that. But as I see it right now, the spaces are not designed properly. They don't meet the correct dimensions, which actually will be referenced in the town engineer comments. So the applicants, I think, should sit down with myself and Tom Talmadge, and maybe we could work something out where we can redraw this to code. As you alluded to, if we are going to do something now that's a permanent improvement, there should probably be an easement granted by the town board to use that portion of the town right-of-way. Additionally, the superintendent of highways is going to have to sign off on this to do that. I'll jump to the town engineer's comments, because actually his first comment is about the dimensions of the parking spaces. And I found it peculiar because he's the one who pointed out to me that the spaces didn't meet the town code requirements. And he says that they're a little bit smaller than the code allows, but that the planning board may decide to relax the code and accept it smaller, and to my knowledge, you can't do that. So I'm a little confused on his first comment, to be honest with you. His second is that he just wants to see some drainage calculations. He says general concept is satisfactory, with the exception of the comments from the fire marshal and fire department, which I'll get to. Those relate to removing 4 spaces from the plan. And then he says the handicap space appears satisfactory, and he says he finds the engineering element satisfactory. But again, I'd like to actually discuss with him whether or not the dimensions of the spaces are correct, because he pointed out to me that they weren't, and I don't know if something's changed that I don't know about. Lighting throughout the site does not comply with the code. Rather than a comprehensive lighting plan, I think if the applicants could submit manufacturer's cut sheets for replacement fixtures, that might be acceptable to the planning board. Landscaping, there's no information on landscaping. They're not really proposing any improvements to the interior of the site. It's all in the parking area, but this is identified as a vegetated buffer in that area that's going to delineate the parking lot from the street, and it should be submitted as to what vegetation they're proposing in there. The fire department said that 4 spaces should be removed. Basically, it's the 4 southernmost spaces here. I think their reasoning being that when you're coming in, it was these ones here. That when you're coming in here, that they don't have enough room to turn around to get to the front of the building. But basically, the applicants will need to sort of redesign the layout to meet that recommendation. And they need approval from the ARB. That application should be submitted. And basically, right now, this is the only site plan we have, this and then the existing conditions. There needs, this is helpful. It focuses on the main portion of the project, but there needs to be a site plan that includes the entirety of the property, shows all the existing improvements, shows all the proposed improvements, includes coverage calculations and all the elements that we have in a site plan. So based on those comments, it appears that the application is incomplete, pending the resolution of those issues.
Thank you, Mr. Shanson. I see Mr. Whalen here tonight.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Richard Whalen, I'm the attorney on the project. Billy Hajek of Landmarks is the planner. He's here tonight also, but he won't say anything. And I will try to be very efficient because we'd all like to go home. This project is, you're all familiar with the site, it's the Ocean Dunes Apartments on Bluff Road, a little bit east of Indian Wells Highway. It is a residential cooperative that goes back, not originally as a cooperative, I guess. It was probably built as a motel, I'm not sure. But the building goes back before zoning. As far as I know, it goes back to the 1950s. It definitely predates zoning because that's what the C of O says. The earliest aerial photograph we found, and it seems to match what Eric is referring to, that shows the site is in the early 1960s. So the building has existed since apparently at least the 50s. The parking has always been where it is today. The parking is in large part, or in part at least, on the Bluff Road right-of-way. The Bluff Road right-of-way, remember, is 99 feet wide. What we want to do, first let me explain where the derivation of this proposal. The cooperative owners have been concerned for some time about safety. Bluff Road, as you all know, has become busier and busier in the summertime. There is now there's a sidewalk on the southern side of Bluff Road. So Bluff Road in general is popular not just with motorists, but is popular with bicyclists and maybe sometimes rollerbladers and runners and walkers and people pushing baby strollers. So the risk of, with uncontrolled access in and out of the parking lot, with the front row of parking spaces literally backing out onto Bluff Road, it's become increasingly unsafe. So the cooperative is concerned, in neither order. They are concerned about liability, and then they're concerned simply about the human, element of they don't want their people hitting and injuring users of the road. So safety is the main driver here. There are several things that the town, not only the cooperative, but the town would benefit from. Not only could we improve road safety along Bluff Road, but we could also improve the aesthetics, because as we all know, this parking lot doesn't conform with our modern standards. We have parking directly in front of a building and in fact right out to the roadway. So they're proposing to put in a hedge basically. There might be a fence in the hedge or something, but we'd put in some sort of a barrier that would improve the aesthetics of the site and would make the parking, or for the most part, if not invisible, less visible. We also put drainage in the parking lot. The parking lot is all asphalt. I don't believe there's any drainage, so we'd install drainage. And then finally, with regard to lighting, first of all, I do want to note, as a matter of law and just to establish this, I don't actually think we're subject to the lighting upgrade requirements, because those apply to non-residential construction, and we're a residential cooperative, and the town code does not really define residential. I just want to state that for the record in case we have any disagreements later on. But my clients have indicated that they don't have a problem with upgrading the lighting. So we do have pole-mounted lighting in the parking lot. We'd have to deal with that anyway as part of the parking lot upgrade. And as far as the other lighting on the site, I think they're willing to also deal with that. So there are a number of things that we could make better on the property: safety, aesthetics, drainage, lighting. Here's the key thing, though. As the memo indicates, we will need approval from the highway superintendent and from the town board, because some of the parking is, and some of the parking will continue to be, in the road right-of-way. So we've submitted this application to the planning board really kind of to get the ball rolling on this and to get feedback from you. That's why you don't have some of the details. For example, we didn't give a landscaping plan other than to show there'll be a hedge in the front.
Or how the parking will be configured, because you
Well,
can make different aisles instead of having this.
Yeah, we're going to be very limited about that. First of all, unfortunately, the designer of the plan, Bruce Siska, who's the architect, was not able to be here tonight. He's on the Village Design Review Board. He's a member of the Village DRB, and they meet tonight, so he was conflicted out. Bruce, I did not and Billy did not, but Bruce did meet with Tom Talmadge in the course of his design. And there were back and forth between, we gave our input to Bruce and so forth. Okay, so I was, yeah. So I'm not sure how much, I wasn't there, so I wasn't aware that Eric had been there. But I'm not sure how much more we're going to be able to improve in terms of the parking lot size, the lot sizes, and the aisle width. I understand the fire department has asked for removal of 4 parking spaces. I can certainly understand 2 of them. I would like to get more information about the other 2. If I understand, they probably want to be able to navigate a fire truck in front of in the aisle closest to the building, and I can see where you probably couldn't do it as it currently stands, but I'm not sure we have to remove 4 parking spaces. But the main thing I want to address is this. Current parking right now consists of parking spaces that back out directly on Bluff Road. Many of those parking spaces are not conforming based on Billy's measurements. Many of those parking spaces right now do not conform to the current code. We cannot put in 65 or 61 or 63, whatever the number is. We can't put in parking spaces that conform strictly to the town code today and also meet the aisle width requirements. We don't have the room to do it. So we're going to have to squeeze somewhere. The planning board does have authority to vary the aisle widths. I don't believe, and I think I'm in agreement with Eric on this, that the planning board has explicit authority to waive or vary the parking size requirements. I should note, though, that the parking size requirements are not, we've talked, or I think Billy has talked to, and Bruce has talked to Tom Talmadge, and I understand what Tom's point of view is, and I'm not going to try to go into it right now. It's too late at night, but there's a technical issue about how you measure the parking spaces. And from a practical standpoint, I kind of agree with Tom. From a strictly the way the code is written standpoint, it's not as clear. So that's the bottom line. We'll have to try to get some more information about it. But I don't think you're going to be able to see a substantial change in the basic layout. There's things we can tweak, but to try to get 65 or even close to 65 parking spaces in here, and remember, we have a C of O for 63 units on this building, there are going to have to be compromises. There's no way to do it and get away from the road. Because the key thing is to pull away from the road, to pull the parking spaces away and not have direct access onto the road, we need not just one, but 2 aisles. And to build in that second aisle means there has to be some compromises in terms of widths. What we would like to see from the planning board is that the planning board, hopefully, and I think this will be likely, that you like the concept, you like what we're moving towards, because ultimately we're probably going to need your support with whatever is developed to be able to get the town highway superintendent to buy into this and the town board as well.
Wouldn't you consider, instead of having the parking right along the road this way, to make like 3 aisles with angle parking, instead of this configuration?
Really Bruce Siska would have to address that. As far as I know, I think Bruce looked at it many different ways.
And it wouldn't meet the 60?
Yeah, I thought we had worked it out where it would meet it, and then I was surprised that when it.
Making parallel aisles, right?
Well, but, I mean, they're the
perpendicular
layout
aisles to the building.
I'm not sure I know what you're.
Right now, you're parking all along this way. If you made perpendicular aisles with angle parking, you might be able to, I don't know the size,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking that's a throw in there.
Yeah, I mean.
Then nobody would really.
Perpendicular to the road?
Yes, perpendicular
We're
to
trying to
the
limit
building.
ingress, we're trying to get one point of ingress and only one point of egress for safety reasons.
Yeah, but then.
And that forces
I don't
us
know
to
the size,
drive
but
parallel
it'd have
to the road.
Generally speaking, the diagonal spaces allow you to sort of crunch the most amount of
Right,
parking in there as
that's what I'm
possible.
saying.
We
So-
had done the numbers, and I thought that worked. But then when it was submitted, Tom told me, it's weird, you can't measure the spaces. If they're diagonal like this, you don't measure this distance, you have to measure like a distance
Like
within, of like a block within
Like the
those spaces.
diameter kind of distance, I get
Yeah,
all that, but I mean, you could probably still put the buffer in, put an aisle behind the buffer, so you'd have an aisle, and then put the lines perpendicular.
We have an aisle
Let
behind
the
the buffer,
engineer
that's
go.
what we have. We have a buffer.
Right.
And mind you, again, still the buffer, and the aisle and some of the parking is still within the town highway right away.
Understood, and that,
And
it'll
I
have to
didn't
be, and
mention,
you
by the
won't be
way-
able to.
Yeah, so we're even using part of the highway right of way, which is what we're doing today, which is what's been done since at least the 1960s, based on aerial photographs. It's still, you have to have 2 aisles.
Will those spots still be open to public as they are now?
No, one of the things we're gonna want is,
I think
well,
that's
they are and
Let's
they
cut to
are.
the chase. I think that's gonna be the highway superintendent's issue with it.
We have 63 units, we have a C of O. Town even approved 16 of those units in the early 1960s. We have to have parking for our units. If we don't have parking for our units, we're gonna come back and we're gonna propose parking on the pond facing the ocean. Because we have the parking on the
But
side.
technically, those spaces now can be used by
Technically, they can.
public.
Technically, they can, and one of the things, and this is why we need everybody on board here, one of the things we're ultimately gonna want from the town would be probably an easement, giving, in exchange for doing these improvements, including putting in a public sidewalk, we're gonna want exclusive right to use the parking spaces. If we don't have an exclusive right to use the parking spaces, then you know what? We got to put parking spaces somewhere else in that property. And if you take a look at the property, that will not be much fun. But we have to have parking for our people on the, you know, people who own units here have to be
So
able to
you
park.
have to just work a lot of stuff out with the town right now before we.
But I'm not going to go to the town, I don't want to go to the town until,
You know what the board has.
that's right.
Okay,
And
okay.
if we have planning consensus that it's a good idea,
All right.
then we'll move forward. If not, status quo.
I wasn't aware, Ian, that the public used those.
Oh, in the summertime,
Yeah,
beach,
absolutely.
beach overflow parking.
And it's legal.
That's why they, I mean, they
is
talk
really?
about
Yeah.
safety being the issue. That's,
Because it's
Some of the spaces are in the highway. in the
No, I
block.
understand
Joe,
that,
that's
but I
gonna
never
be-
knew I could park
That's the
there.
crunch. That's the issue.
yeah.
Always spread the word, Joe.
Parking there now.
And is that with a permit, or just, people just do it?
No, you just
park
can't.
I mean,
That's
my-
the issue here. I mean, that's.
my impression is it's not so bad.
What's right there right now?
Yeah.
The safety part of it, the whole.
Have there been any accidents there?
I don't know. I've never actually asked that, but the fact that there haven't doesn't mean that there won't be. 'cause
No,
it's
that's
not,
true.
you
It
know,
would be
you can
nice if
tell
the
from looking at it.
sidewalk was continued, though.
Yeah.
Makes it good to run on.
So Diana, do you have any additional?
That's,
Okay.
I think I've said pretty much, you know.
How about you, Pat?
I think this is a win-win. I think the town would jump on this, and I would totally support it. I mean, from a aesthetic standpoint, from a safety standpoint, and for runoff. Are they gonna redo the parking lot, contain all this stuff on site? I think it's a win-win for all, and I couldn't imagine the town or the engineer not wanting this.
Okay. How about you, Ian?
You know, if they were your parking spaces and they weren't used by the public, I think it's a great idea. I know that the highway superintendent has some issues with that preliminarily speaking anyway.
I think so.
And so I just wanna get that out there because that is the issue. If that weren't an issue, I think there's no question here that it's a great plan. I like a lot about the plan, but, you know, parking near our beaches is pretty limited, so to give that up, I'm certainly not prepared to do that. I wanna hear more about Steve Lynch's issues with it and maybe work through it, but.
If I could just add one thing on that, I have not talked to Steve Lynch about it or met with him. I understand before I was involved that some representatives of the cooperative had met with him, and they got a negative response. I don't know the details, all I know is he didn't seem to be very favorably disposed towards it. But then again, he didn't have a plan, so I don't know what they discussed with him. My hope is that if we show a plan that has a lot of public benefits, then Steve would not object to what we're proposing.
I'm not saying I'm opposed, I'm saying if I am opposed in the end, that's why. And so
Yeah.
let's work through that issue, and I think there's very little else to work through.
Okay. Joe Potter?
Yeah, I was loving it until Ian raised that issue, and I'm very reluctant to tie up public property for exclusive private use in principle, so I'm a little on the fence. I would want to know more about that issue, or
And
whether there could be some public access
I
once
think
this
there are
is
a lot of
built.
people that don't know that the public can park there like you and I.
But
I've
if
lived
it's
here my
being
whole life.
used, I'd really want to know how much it's being used. I mean, I assume that, you know, all the units, well, they probably are all fully occupied. Anyway, that's a caveat, otherwise I think it's great.
Nancy
I think it's organizing what's now kind of a ramshackle parking thing, and I run by there all the time, and I think it's kind of even dangerous to leave the sidewalk and kind of run across that area, not knowing who's coming, going, and, you know, make sure I'm paying attention so I don't get run over, so I'm all for it, and good luck.
Yeah, it's not just joggers, and you got people on bikes, you got kids, you got rollerbladers, I mean, you have it all. And I think that would really make it a safer situation. And I don't necessarily have a problem with it being for exclusive rights for the people that live there. You know, I think it would be frustrating if I had a unit in there and I came in August and I couldn't get a parking spot. I mean, that doesn't seem real fair to me if that's my residence and you know, I don't have a place to park. But again, that's
Otherwise, you
just.
put the parking by the pool in the back, okay?
The other alternative.
There you go.
Yeah.
And that wouldn't be a problem.
So in reference to the consensus here, maybe before we get into all this, let's hear from the highway superintendent.
He wants our.
Because to Ian's point, you know, he might have something there, and look, I could totally change my opinion here if he comes back and says, listen, you guys didn't think about this, and here's
there might
this.
be some
So,
hiccup.
yeah, so we're missing a big piece of the puzzle here.
I mean,
Yeah.
preliminaries before you. I think I've heard enough to kind of get the board's sense of it. You know, we'll talk to Eric and to Tom Talmadge. We'll have to make contact with Steve Lynch. I gather that if their concerns, highway superintendent's concerns, can be alleviated, you're probably in favor of it.
Oh, yeah.
That's basically the answer.
If I eventually need something from.
Everything about it's great. The only part is the exclusivity. That's the only part that's gets passed.
Well, you can see on the survey, you know, there's let me just put one final point on this. As far as I can tell, I've not talked to the surveyor, David Fox, myself, but I wouldn't totally we think that the parking spaces shown in the survey are pretty accurate, but we assume that they were taken from aerial photography. So they can't necessarily be taken as precise gospel. But if you look at the survey, which shows existing conditions, and Bruce Siska uses that survey information on his existing condition site plan, you'll see that the front row of parking spaces and then portions of the other are on the highway right away. That's why, you know, but some of those parking spaces straddle the line, and presumably the cooperative can say, hey, public, you can't park there because partially it's on our property. So, you know.
Okay.
Well, Rick, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Hayjack. I'm sorry you guys had to wait around so long, but appreciate your patience.
Don't stay much longer.
Yeah.
This is like the old days.
Especially feel bad for this guy.
We'll continue on. The site plan review is 458 Panago Road Storage Shed.
This was every week.
This is you, sir? Wow. Okay,
Sorry.
thank you.
We used to take off
imagine,
every
yeah.
Wednesday.
I think this is a relatively quick one, too, so I apologize.
Poor guy.
Okay.
So
At the time of the last review, the shed on this property is proposed to be moved and relocated and, repositioned on the property. At the time of the last review, it involved an addition to the shed. It's in a resident zoning district, so that would have been a illegal expansion of a non-conforming use. They've removed that addition. The applicants have submitted a revised site plan that relocates the shed in an area that conforms to all applicable dimensional regulations. They've submitted a lighting plan, which we find acceptable. You should determine if you agree. They're proposing to add 3 6-foot-tall white pines to the corner of the relocated shed to buffer the neighboring residential property. You should determine if that is acceptable. And the town engineer has stated that he finds the engineering element satisfactory, so provided you agree, it appears that the application is complete and ready for a public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Chance. Did you have any initial comments, or you want us to go as a board and discuss it, and we'll call you up if we have questions, if that's okay? Okay, wonderful. Then I'll go right to Diana Weir.
Thank you for doing the screening, for moving it to where it should be, and I don't see any other problems with this. The drainage issues and what Tom said, I agree with, so I think this is pretty much ready.
Pat Schutte?
I as well, and thank you. You know,
Yeah.
it was a good chance you were going to have some neighborhood opposition there, so I think you mitigated that with this. And I mean, you'll never know to the public hearing, but I think you've eliminated a lot of this, so I think we're ready to go to public hearing.
Ian Calder, Piedmont?
I agree. Thank you for your patience tonight. Sorry that you ended up last. You came before us before. We offered some suggestions. You were very willing to work with us, the department, and I think the plan's a good one and it's ready for public hearing.
Okay. Joe Potter?
Yeah, I agree.
And Nancy Keeshan?
Sounds good to me.
So it's unanimous. I also agree. So the board agrees that the application is complete and ready to be scheduled for a public hearing. Thank you again for your patience. All right.
When is the next?
4 hours for that, right? All right.
Thank you.
You could have been paying someone.
You can watch it online if you missed anything for the last 3 hours.
All right, so at this time, let's get into our regular meeting. We have just one resolution. That's de Blase, and that's Nancy Keeshan.
In the matter of the application of de Blase minor subdivision for an extension of time for 1 year or until May 2nd, 2016. 2016, 2015, shouldn't that be? 1 year?
Is this extension for 1 year, Marguerite, or 2 years?
It says in 1 year increments.
1 year or until?
Until what? Okay, so then they get to 2016, we're good. Then, after having been explained the details, I've read the resolution and moved for its adoption.
Second it.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Then pass and carry. A review of the minutes from the last meeting on September 17th. Any comments, any changes, any corrections?
Okay, motion to accept the minutes as.
All in favor?
Aye.
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting. No one's going to take that from me.
That's right.